Chapter 31. We stopped at the garage, and as I grumpily made my way out of the car, June grabbed me, stopping me from stomping off to the apartment. "Stop being grumpy. You're like a cat. Come on, after action meeting," he told me as he waited for me to stop resisting before I sighed and followed after. "Fine." I grumped at him, but followed after as we went out the window to the dojo. We headed straight downstairs from the side entrance and into the server room. There, arrayed around the TV on old couches, kamikaze were waiting as Fujimura stood in front of the TV, looming over the gathering. Unfortunately, there was no more space on the couches, so June and I waited behind, while Akari just slipped into the lap of one of the Borgs. Not that it seemed to be welcome, as he grumbled and tried to shove her off, only to earn a sharp foot curling up and nearly skewering his throat. The two of them fought for a moment. A bladed foot and a chromed-out hand practically sparking off each other, before Fujimura growled a low noise that seemed to vibrate the room and cut out the attempted homicide. "Failure. We took a wound from a basic op. I'm disappointed," he said, and I realized he was basically giving us a score on how well we had all done. Rude. He was the one in charge. If we failed, it was his fault. If they failed, I wasn't really a part of this. Why was I even here? He'll live. It was just a 9mm, went under his subdermals. Doc is already checking him out. Akari called out, but was silenced with a look. "We are the kamikaze, we shouldn't be taking wounds from chaff. I expect all of you to receive a session with Ozeki-sensei," he demanded, and all the hardened killers and murderers, the somewhat emotionless Borgs, all groaned. "Kusanagi, you got distracted. If you can't keep your focus, put down your mask," he demanded, suddenly singling out June thankfully, as he was staring at June and not me. "I will not fail again, Fujimura-sama. Your sister fighting beside you had better not distract you again. Girl, you killed 2 with that hand cannon of yours. You should have killed at least 3. Yeah, I know. I'm super annoyed. I only killed 2, you know? I was gonna stay behind and murder some of their reinforcements too, but June pulled me away. A common maelstrom assault group is more than 40 Borgs, girl." "Really? So many? Oh man. Now I'm really disappointed," I grumbled as I purposefully turned away from June. "So much XP. Ruined. Seriously, I could have just snuck into their cars while they were distracted, then they would take me back to their headquarters. I would just slowly ghost them one by one, until they were all dead. It would have worked. I mean, sure, so many could make it hard. But I could do it." The room was silent for a while as I grumbled, staring at the wall, before Fujimura finally seemed to continue. "Right. We will have another job tomorrow. Prepare," he demanded, and then stomped out of the room. "Ack!" I cried out instantly as June grabbed the top of my head with his stupid chrome hand. "You aren't going to fight 40 Borgs," he hissed as he pushed me out of the room, back towards the apartment. Shows what he knows. I wasn't tired. Honestly, I didn't even feel the need to sleep. Normally I would have just grabbed some tech and started working. But I wanted blood. June had gone to sleep and I went ahead and napped for an hour. Which is the reason June had no idea that I had gotten up afterwards and suited back up. I left. I loved June 'cause he was such a dumb older brother, but I wasn't going to live my life his way. I couldn't. So I slipped out of the apartment, out onto the street, and then headed a few blocks away to get out from the jammer, and to make sure what I did next wouldn't lead back to the dojo. I called my car. It was something that still took me by surprise. Self-driving cars were still kinda wild. I waited for about 10 minutes for my quadra to turn the corner and stop in front of me, with a beep of its horn letting me know it had arrived. I slipped into the driver's seat with a grin. I was only 250 XP away from a level up. My foot touched the gas pedal and I was off. Driving into the city, actually feeling alone for the first time in almost a week. I felt free. No tiger claws hovering around, no June almost smothering me in protectiveness. I was actually relieved to just be away. I drove north. Up into Watson. Towards Maelstrom Turf. I had no idea where I could find them, but I bet just driving around would find me a few targets to prey upon. The city was in an active war right now. Unfortunately, for the first long while, I didn't find much. The streets were quiet, broken only by gunshots blocks away that by the time I came anywhere near, I couldn't find the source. Annoying to say the least. I drove around, only finding the tail ends of skirmishes. I guess even in a gang war, there wasn't constant mass fighting going on. Shame. Finally though, action found me. I turned a corner only to come across a roadblock. 3 cars on fire and burning as a squad of maelstrom gunks hung around them, guns out. I only had a second to react, because the goons were already raising their guns. Cool dropped over me. Everything became clear. I hit the accelerator. The fact I turned their little trap immediately back on them is why I didn't get absolutely destroyed, and why some of them jumped out of the way instead of shooting up my ride. Not that they didn't try. A few bullets ricocheted off my quadra's armor. So I accelerated towards the roadblock, the 4 sets of spider optics all reacting in different ways. I flipped the steering wheel at the last second. My quadra's back end slipped out at the sudden adjustment as the car spun. A loud thunk-thunk echoing out from behind me, as my wheels ran over a prone maelstrom gonk who had thought jumping away from where I had been aiming would save him. Then my driver's door opened with a flip of the handle, and before the car had even come to a complete stop, I was stepping out. Barrier already raised and aiming. My Karoshi kept track of all of them. The thunderous retort of my hand cannon smashed into the first Borg, the fucker that had started shooting at my car with his Lexington in a spray of bullets. I was lucky. Despite my quick draw aim being off, the second of adjustment I had to make as I stepped out of the quadra let me adjust. My 1 bullet did the trick. I turned to the next one. And again, my barrier barked into the night, and the screams of Maelstrom being sent straight to their digital gods cut out. Of course, my assault wasn't perfect. I hadn't exactly expected a roadblock ambush. I winced as a round from one of the goons on the other side of the barrier slammed into my chest. His panicked fire wasn't accurate, but it was unfortunately painful. The SMG skittered bullets across the pavement as I moved, rushing him. I could feel another round pound into my chest, but I ignored it. Even if it knocked the air out of me, I could still move. I slid over the back of one of the burning cars, and then I was right next to him. His red eyes were unable to widen in terror, but I could see the look on his face. It warmed my frozen heart for a moment. Then my katana blurred a superheated red line through the darkness. And his arms fell with a splat onto the ground. White blood splashing over my boots. Phew-uck, he screamed, falling to the ground and rolling around after I disarmed him. Instinctually, he screamed curses at the pain as I watched on. I took a moment to catch my breath, each gasp was coming out a little painfully. I checked my side and winced as I pulled out a bullet from the side of my leotard. At least the armor was working. Still hurt though. Felt like I had gotten punched in the ribs. The armless gonk was still screaming, which was annoying though. I walked over and without a word smashed my boot into his side. Katana held point down towards his stupid throat. His screams turned into wheezing cries of pain, but that was all I needed. You are only alive because I need something from you. You want to stay alive? Answer my question. Where can I find the spider Ripperdoc? The maelstrom gonk was still whining in pain, but he seemed to hear me. Fuck you. He finally said, as he tried to spit at me. His head rolled away a moment later. Should have left 2 of them alive. That way I can kill one in front of the other and get my answers. I muttered to myself as I sheathed the katana. I like katana. Katana is good. I sighed, rubbing my ribs. Bullets hurt. Stupid maelstrom. Looking around at the dead bodies and the burned-out wrecks, I realized I should probably do something. Normally I would call the NCPD, but that wasn't really a thing right now. So instead I got looting. Checking the bodies, grabbing weapons, and throwing them in the trunk of my quadra before dragging the bodies off the street. With the quadra, I nudged the burning wrecks out of the road, opening it back up. Satisfied, I jumped back into my ride and floored it through the former roadblock. All the while I smiled. I had leveled up. 500 XP gained. 500 XP gained. 500 XP gained. 500 XP gained. Level up achieved. 1 stat point gained. 1 skill point gained. Level 6. I had also leveled up driving and handguns. Driving skill level up. 1 perk point gained. Handgun skill level up. 1 perk point gained. With my awesome driving attack, I had hit driving 5, and handguns 5. 2 perks. Both were easy picks. Since I was driving a high-end car, I wanted something to make sure I could handle it as best as I could when I needed to really move. Plus I just thought it was cool. Drifting, never spill a drop of tofu water. You have a prescient knowledge of how to go into, and pull out of a drift. The second perk was just as easy. Considering I now knew some perks could carry over to other weapons and guns, a perk I had considered okay was now super needed. Rapid reload, never drop a mag or fumble a reload. Reloading your gun will never slow down your rate of fire. That would work for all of my guns. I shook the instincts and muscle memory out of my head for a moment after I picked both back to back. I was ready to continue my hunt. Now if only my arms weren't so weird. My eyes wandered to adaptation. Not yet. I could fight like this, and I didn't know what adaptation would do. Best to try new things when I am at home safe. So I simply kept going. This was opening up to be a good night. This was not a good night, fuckers. Dented my car. I had found more maelstrom. Or rather they had found me. Again. I think driving a jet black Quadra wasn't a good idea for stealth. I had stopped at a light. Driving safe was important after all. When a van full of maelstrom had turned a corner ahead veering left and right down the road, van doors opened and the gonks cheering and roaring as they smashed cars and anything they could reach with pipes or tire irons. They were driving on the wrong side of the road aiming straight for me. I realized it just in time to flip my Quadra into reverse and hit the gas, just managing to turn the car so the van didn't hit me full on. Instead, they scraped past my Quadra before stopping not far away. A bunch of the gonks jumping out brandishing melee weapons, or handguns. I growled even as cool flowed over me. Angry, very angry, but a cold furious rage. Those fuckers dented my car. So as the maelstrom fucks approached, I did something they probably weren't expecting. I hit the gas straight at them. They never seemed to expect the aggressive acceleration. The first gonk was smashed into my hood, his stupid red eyes looking up at me in horror as I drove him down the street. He was hanging on for dear life, trying to stay on as I accelerated much faster than he probably expected. I drove for a moment longer, long enough for the maelstrom gunfire behind me to fall silent before I opened my driver's door. Beria peeked out to say hello. The poor gonk's face stilled in terror as he came face to face with my hand cannon. I was really thankful that the Quadra didn't have a windshield, but instead an armored chassis and a digital screen, because the blood splatter would have taken minutes to get rid of with windshield wipers. 500 XP gained. I looked back, the other maelstrom had rushed to their van and were chasing me. I hummed a little as I hit the accelerator. My hands danced over the steering wheel as I took a turn in a drift. I looked into my rearview mirror expecting to see them chasing me, only to realize a problem. They were fucking slow. Just that drift, and my acceleration alone meant they were already losing me. I couldn't accept that. These fuckers had tried to kill me. They had scratched and dented my car. I just spent thousands of eddies fixing that. And killing people was my job. These gonks were so slow. I accelerated again. Drifting into an alley between two parked cars, I raced to the next street, and then took a left, and another left. I slowed down around the next corner. Lights off. Turning down the street and seeing the stupid maelstrom van slow rolling past the alley I had raced down. But they realized I had lost them. I grinned as I turned the engine off, and slipped into a parking space. Waiting as I watched the gonks pile out of the van to pick up their poor friend off the road. Eventually, they grabbed him and dragged him into the van, a trail of blood running across the blacktop. Once they all piled in, they started driving off. I started up my engine, keeping the lights off, and did the same. That's right, you gonks. Lead me to some more XP. Chapter 32. Did you know following someone is actually a lot harder than you might think? Get too far away and they could turn a corner and I might lose sight of them, stay too close and they might notice the rumble of my engine behind them. I got really lucky. I didn't have any specific skill set helping here, but driving and ninjutsu came together to make sure I managed to keep on them through the streets of Night City, all the way to their little lot, tucked away between industrial parks. I made sure to park and disappear as I watched them turn in, wait for the gate to open, and then finish driving inside. Perfect. I practically growled, hands reflexively clenching at the slaughter that I was now eagerly looking forward to. I reached over to the bag of guns that was still sitting on my passenger seat and opened it up, only to frown. All of it looked nice, sure, but I still learned my lesson from the kamikaze. If I went in loud, I might not walk out. I took a deep breath and patted my poor Carnage and Tactician. I kept collecting shotguns, and not really using them. I would have to figure out something to do with them soon. But instead I secured the katana on my hip once more, and made sure my barrier was loaded and ready, with plenty of ammo in my thigh pockets, along with my medical pouches. Then I disappeared into the night. The entire area was poorly lit, old industrial parks and massive empty structures. I dashed down the sidewalk, my feet not making a single noise as I crept up to the gate the van had disappeared into. Peeking my head inside, I instantly jerked back. The gate led to a small lot area with 2 buildings on each side. The one to the left was unconnected to the main structure, looking more like an office attachment. Then there was the main structure, which had a rolling garage door that was closing. There were guards, but like I expected, the maelstrom weren't so much looking around as just lazing around the area. One was on the ground floor, back against the office building, sitting in a broken old lawn chair, a little TV on a stand in front of him that he was watching. But there were cameras. And I had noticed someone standing on top of the garage as well, turning and walking away from the courtyard. Probably having checked on the van coming in before disappearing back over the roof. I peeked twice more. Thankfully the streets weren't well lit out here, so I was able to scope out a few of the cameras. A quick scan using my Karoshi told me everything I needed to know. They were definitely connected to a secure system. If I tried to breach them, they would definitely signal an intrusion, because even with a glance I could see they were more secure than I would normally attribute to Maelstrom. Luckily, ping was still safe to use. My eyes flashed as I peeked out and pinged the camera hanging over the actual entrance door to the garage. A moment later, the quick hack went through, and my vision even through the wall suddenly had a golden line showing me where to go. I still loved seeing the Wi-Fi connections between all the systems. Although this time I was impressed. They definitely had an actual netrunner running things, because my ping only had a single connection point. According to all the knowledge I had gained on net running, that meant the system was secured. Each camera might have a single hub system, but each spoke was cut off, meaning I couldn't just see every camera or security system on the system. I would have to breach the hub to be able to do that. Unfortunately, the line led inside, which means I would have to sneak in with the cameras still active and take it out and the netrunner without sounding an alarm. I pulled up my stat screen for a moment. I did have a stat and skill point. It was just one more point. I could always start saving for the adaptation right after. Plus I might even get enough kills. My finger aimed to hit the button, even if it was all virtual, but I did like the feeling of actually pushing the buttons, but I stalled. No. I could do this. I needed to experiment with adaptation when I got home. The foreign feeling of my new arms made this an absolute priority, even if it would put my cool all the way to 9. Such a big number. I shook it away. I could still level ninjutsu without spending a point right now. Time to work for it. So I shook the idea out of my head and decided to find a way in. There wasn't anything on this side of the gate, so I backed up a bit and did a fun little acrobatic somersault. I tumbled forward and then back to my feet on the other side of the gate. So fast and in the dark I knew the gonk watching TV couldn't have seen me. I smiled as I got an athletics alert, but I immediately started moving silently again. Time to sneak through this maelstrom base. I paced around the outside of the lot. The concrete wall surrounding the place was topped by barbed wire, but after searching around I found an alley on the back side that had another gate leading from it, and from here, I was in even greater shadow. With it I could scope out the layout, including keeping an eye for the guy on the roof. After a minute of peeking and checking out the layout, I realized I was gonna have to kill the guy on the roof if I was going to get in. He had moved away from the edge, but with a bit of effort and pulling myself up on the concrete wall, carefully avoiding the wire and peeking over, I had spotted him. He was camped in a little structure they had set up on the roof. I could faintly hear a TV going from up there as well, so both guards were distracted. The easiest way to get up there was from the concrete wall, which only had a small gap to the roof, but the barbed wire was in the way. I couldn't exactly walk through that, it would slice me to ribbons. Or just knock me down like it did in the game. No, wait. This wasn't a game. I rolled my eyes because bonking my head might make noise, and it would definitely be motion, which was anathema to stealth. Stillness is sightless. I slipped past the rear gate towards the back corner of the property. The darkest, quietest section. It was also well hidden from any of the cameras. With a grin, I pulled out my katana. The blazing hot edge, glowing in the darkness. I held it up and slowly cut through the razor wire. The heat slowly melted through the strand, and after a minute I had sliced 2 cuts into the wire. Then came the hard part. Slowly, before the wire could fall and make a racket, I turned off the heat blade and used the sword to slowly gather up the small section of the wire I had cut. Then, mostly thanks to the strength in my new arms, I lifted it off the wall and slowly let it fall to the ground outside the complex. I breathed a sigh of relief when I was done, sheathing my katana and stretching my back, because that had been pretty rough on my shoulder muscles. The tension in between my shoulder blades felt horrible. I rolled my shoulders, but that didn't do anything, not like it used to. They weren't even attached to the muscles in the same way. The tension simply sat there like a rock. I could feel my fingers practically twitching as I felt muscles try to contract and shift, try to adjust against unyielding chrome. I shook it away, deep breath in and out. I now had a way in. Focus on the mission. I quickly jumped the fence, parkour, making the whole thing child's play as I then basically stepped onto the roof of the garage. My trusty knife was pulled free as I lowered myself to the ground and almost crawled up to the little hidden structure. It was a couple pieces of garbage nailed together, resting on an AC unit. The whole thing was just wide enough for him to sit inside on a chair with a little TV and a table. Luckily, he was distracted by the TV. I scanned him first, making sure he wasn't protected with subdermal armor. I was starting to hate running into cheaters who used subdermal armor. He wasn't. At least not everywhere. Knife went in and out, and his TV got sprayed with arterial blood, but it was quiet. I made sure he slumped over in his chair. No one would ever notice. 750 XP gained. I blinked. That was weird, I almost never got that XP. It was usually only 500 or 1000. Why was this guy an odd number? Maybe it was the partial armor? He would be tougher than a normal gonk on the street, even if his subdermal wasn't a full covering. But as I started looking around, I noticed it. Ah. I whispered breathlessly. I reached out and took the rifle that was resting against the door of the hide. An Akomada. The moment I touched her, I knew she was loaded and ready, practically purring to be used. I had missed my opportunity earlier, but not again. But I shook my head. Too loud. Next time. I whispered silently against her barrel as I held a toy that I was going to have so much fun with. A sniper rifle. Oh man, I was gonna get so many headshots. But that was later. I set the Nakomata down where I could collect it later and started exploring. This guy wouldn't be up here without a way down, and I found it. There was a door on the roof that was a staircase access. It was unlocked and I slipped in. The noise inside was louder, heavy metal that the maelstrom were rocking out to, and the general noise of people. I slipped down the stairway slowly, making sure to check every corner. I had to be very, very careful of cameras. The stairs led to a second-floor room that was overlooking the garage area, where most of the gonks were hanging around. I could hear a few curses and raised voices from there. But that wasn't my goal. I was following the golden light. The first room I came to was a break room. Couches around an entertainment station, food and drinks, an old microwave. Everything a gang would need to keep their people going. It wasn't empty. A maelstrom gonk was grumbling as he ripped apart some food packaging to put in the microwave. I checked for cameras, and since it was clear, I moved in. This guy had better subdermals. At least he did around his neck. There was a serious problem with Borgs. You never knew if they had a second heart or something. Thankfully, I had a way around it. My katana was drawn without a noise. The thermal blade heated up instantly to a withering temperature. As I approached, something alerted him, whether the heat from the blade, a noise, or a flickering of something out of the corner of his optics. Hell, it could have been a reflection in the shiny microwave. It didn't save him though. He started turning as my katana flashed, cutting and burning through his armored neck. It was hard, tough, his subdermal, trying to stall out my blade, but it was kind of hard to scream when your throat was being burned away. I jerked the blade free and he slumped to the ground, head not quite unattached, but definitely dead. 1000 XP gained. Oh yeah. That's the good stuff. I sheathed my katana, ACI hauled him up as best I could, grunting a bit at the weight as I pulled him into a dark corner. Then I stood up, and continued on following that golden line. I couldn't keep the smile off my face as I slipped through the shadows. I was happy. Thrilled, excited, and every positive emotion I could imagine. There was probably something wrong with that, but I didn't care. I guess I had been honest with June. I really did love killing. I walked out onto a catwalk overlooking the garage, and I could see them hauling the dead Maelstrom from the van and into a small room in the back. I couldn't quite make out what everyone was saying, the music was too loud. I would have to do something about that, maybe a cyberware to let me make out sound better? That actually could be useful. I made a note for myself before continuing across the catwalk. Not a single noise was made as I stepped onto the metal grate floors. I traveled across the entire building, following the golden light, to a small room in the upper corner of the building. I licked my lips as I got closer and closer to my target. Pressing myself up against the wall next to the see-through armored door that was so popular in Night City, I peeked in, only to still empty. Whatever netrunner ran the security here wasn't in. I pouted, I had been looking forward to that kill. I kind of wanted to steal some netrunning gear. I slipped into the room without any trouble, and looked around the array of computers. With a few minutes of work, I was breaching into the security system. The cameras all turned off, while I uploaded my daemon. I could practically see the daemon slipping into the network, back hacking to every member of Maelstrom that was hooked into the security. Their visuals of me would distort and disappear. I pulled out the jack from the computer rig, and had just clicked it back into my neck when I felt it. Danger sense. I moved, flattening myself against the wall next to the door, as the glass door opened, and a Maelstrom gonk walked in, wearing a netrunning suit. I hadn't seen him before. Where had he been? In the small room they had taken the dead gonk from before? It didn't matter. I wasn't exactly hidden from where I stood, and he would see me as soon as he sat at the computer. So I never gave him the chance. I reached out, both of my armored hands grabbing a different side of his head, before I jerked. The echoing snap of his neck shattering from the force broke the silence, and I simply held his body for a moment as he twitched and shivered in his death throes. 1000 XP gained. Okay, that made this easier. I also smiled at the ninjutsu alerts I was getting for the stealth kills. I let him flop onto the ground as I stretched my back. Holding someone up by his head was hard even with cyber arms. I walked back over to the system, and brought up the security cams. I started scanning and counting, getting the numbers of the Strom in their little hideout, looking for the actual dangerous ones. Marking everything I could see with the cameras, I shut them back down and slipped back out of the room. The first Maelstrom didn't even see me. He was looking through a toolbox, digging through it as he struggled to find the tool he needed. When I dropped down from above, katana blazing, the force sliced completely through his neck. His head fell into the toolbox as I pushed his body to fall away from the stuff. The noise of his body falling was completely covered up by the heavy music filling the garage. 500 XP gained. I slipped away, already heading towards the next target. A woman this time. She was in the cab of a truck that had the hood up. Another Storm working on the inside of the cab. I could hear him call out from time to tell her to give it some gas or test something. With the cab door open, it was a cakewalk. I slipped in my knife glinting for just a moment as I ripped her throat apart, pushing her to fall into the passenger seat as she bled out with quiet gasps not loud enough to be heard over the music. 500 XP gained. With her gone, the guy working on the engine was next. I slipped back out and around, and while his face was stuck inside the hood, he got to feel a knife ripping open his throat as well. I left him there, leaking blood into the engine. 500 XP gained. Unfortunately, as good as I wasn't perfect. Fuck. A voice roared out, and I jerked back. The storm I had head chopped had been found. I grumbled, stupid NPCs. Don't you know you are supposed to stay put? I had completely missed one. So I rushed him. Carl is dead. Fuck we go. His cry was cut off as I leapt at him, knife sinking into his throat as I twisted around him for a moment, using the centrifugal force to rip the knife right back out. He fell like I had cut his strings. 500 XP gained. Level up achieved. 1 stat point gained. 1 skill point gained. I grinned despite being caught as a few maelstrom rushed from whatever they were doing to check out what the yelling was about. They found me there. Already moving, knife dripping with blood as I raced through the mess of vehicles and parts aiming for one thing in particular. I dodged through instinctive bullets that were arcing closer and closer to me. But I made it. I hit the light switch and then slashed it with my katana. Darkness instantly smothering the entire garage, beside a few electronic lights still active, radios and such. But with darkness came a moment where they would lose sight of me. Their optics having to react to the change in lighting, I continued running, ignoring the gunfire that splattered where I had been. Plus I grinned, my demon was working through their network. I wonder what they were thinking. When despite being able to see in the dark with their stupid optics, I seemed to disappear into the shadows. Chapter 33. William Frostguard Frost. Frostguard was pretty pissed. A fucking Jap was tearing up the boys. Damned tiger claws were attacking in the middle of the night with fucking ninjas. He had only seen the one. Just one, and a kid at that. The girl was fast. After Jack Shift had called out, everyone had grabbed a weapon, but Jack hadn't lived long after that. Good kid Jack, bit stupid, but he did right in the end. He put out the alarm. But now Frost had a fucking ninja Jap killing everyone. There were only 6 strong left. Everyone else Frostguard had called didn't pick up. Hell, even Bite wasn't picking up. Fucking ninja already killed their netrunner. Fuck. Brick was gonna be pissed. Bite had been important. Not every gonk on the street can act as a serious netrunner. Stay close. He yelled out as he forced his Ajax to keep aiming around the dark room. Bitch had disappeared as soon as the boys started calling out for her. Then she cut the fucking lights. If they were any of the other gangs it might have worked, but the spider optics the maelstrom chipped into every member could see in the dark just fine. Except, somehow she had disappeared. One moment he was staring at her as she raced off into the side of the garage, and then next his optics simply couldn't keep track of her. Or more like she had simply shifted into smoke and disappeared. Fucking bullshit. Some sort of optical camo? He wasn't sure, hadn't seen any of the usual shifting from that. Where the fuck did she go? Rustproof called out and Frost snorted at the panicked tone as some of the fuckers lost their cool. Firing blindly into the darkness. They were panicking. Frost realized right then that if he stuck around he was just as likely to get shot in the back as he was the front. He started shifting back towards the entrance, optics wide to look for her. She had to still be here, right? Maybe she had just delted once she got spotted? Possible, but Frost wasn't going to count on it. He had already sent out an alert, all he had to do was survive until the response showed up. Hey! Where did stick shift go? Rustproof called out suddenly as he spun around, and Frost looked around his Ajax following his sight as he looked to where oil that fuck had been standing. He wasn't there anymore. Realizing what had happened, Frost let instincts from the war take over. He shifted and fired, shattering the radios that had been filling the garage with music the whole time. The music that had covered the ninja's assault. The sudden quiet was almost oppressive and Frost, Rust, and the other 2 remaining Maelstrom all quickly gathered together in a group, guns out. Even if Frost and his Ajax was the biggest piece among them. He sighed, realized they were all cluttering him because they wanted him to save them. Cowards. But he didn't know what to say, so instead of trying to take control of the idiots, he continued backing up towards the door. Hopefully they will be able to hear her now. But the garage was quiet besides the whispering and clanking of the idiots surrounding him. Fuck this. Frost kept walking backwards, towards the door. Yet nothing was moving. Just a quiet that had settled on the garage. Finally, he reached the door and with one hand burst it open as he hurried outside, the other four right along with him. Outside it was quiet, and Frost caught his breath for a second as he looked around. Oilslick's post on the ground floor was knocked over as he had come running at the alert, but Frost hadn't seen Triggerfinger. He looked up, but other than the faint sound of his TV playing, he wasn't around. Dead then. Damn, she had snuck up on that old war dog? Alright. Come on, stay together, you idiots. He barked as his little group had started splitting apart, but his call brought them back together. We hold out here. She can't sneak up on us here, we just have to wait for reinforcements. See how this ninja bitch likes trying her hand against 40 of us. He yelled the number. If the ninja was still here, hopefully the idea of 40 men all hunting her would scare her off. Even if it wasn't likely he would receive that kind of response. Hopefully the Jap didn't know that. Then with a few pointed fingers and barked orders, he had everyone in place. There were only 2 ways out of the garage, well 3 if you counted the massive roller doors. Otherwise it was the roof, and the ground floor door that they had just walked out of. She was trapped in there. All he had to do was keep the place secure until more guns showed up. At least that is what he thought. He turned around to look over everyone, making sure everyone was where they should be. When a gunshot startled everyone as the gonk he had sent up onto the roof to watch the roof access came falling off the edge of the roof, falling with a splat as he had a massive hole in his chest. Damn gonk. He cursed him for being stupid enough to get shot. His Ajax came up and peppered the roof, causing the others to join him. If she was up there, they only had to hit her once. For Maelstrom unloading on the roof had to be enough. He flipped his empty magazine out and grabbed his spare from his jacket pocket. He would be out after this. Damn it. He wasn't exactly loaded for war while he had his feet up inside the safe house. Anyone see her? He roared, which slowly caused everyone to stop firing as they all reloaded, but all he got back was shaking heads. Well, don't just stand there. Go dash! He was cut off as a gunshot rang out, one that he recognized this time. Triggerfinger's sniper rifle. Fuck. One of the boys, head still shaking, suddenly only had a spray of blood in place of his skull. Slowly he flopped down onto the ground. Ajax raised, he started firing towards where the gunshot had come from, but as his round bounced off concrete, he realized what had happened. The bitch. She was shooting through the walls. She's shooting through the walls. Move. Don't stand still. Her optics can't lock you if you keep moving. He roared out, and it was only barely enough to save Oilslick as he shifted and moved just in time for a round to punch through the wall of the garage. The bitch had gone back inside? Fine. He roared as he rushed back into the door. He wasn't going to stand around and get ripped apart. If she was running around with a Nakomata, it would slow her down. They weren't exactly the most mobile weapons, considering how long and heavy they were. He kicked the door back open, his optics again, cutting through the darkness as he searched for her. A flicker of movement and he opened fire. His Ajax barked again and again as he filled the area with bullets. She disappeared again, jumping behind the van as he stopped firing, waiting for her to appear, only to realize she had somehow vanished. Hey gonks! She is on the run, stay together. He roared through the walls as he rushed not to follow her, but to the little office he had taken over when they claimed this old garage as a base. He keyed open the door and slipped inside, quickly grabbing his old vest that had his extra mags and slipped into it, all the while shifting around to make sure she couldn't pop him through a wall. Of course, a moment later, gunshots started echoing around. Tiny blips of his buddies' pea shooters, and the big echoing retorts of the Nakomata. He ran to get back outside, but by the time he kicked the door open again, it was quiet. They were dead. Oilslick, well on his way to being an oil stain as he bled out. Bitch! Come on then. You've cut down these gonks. You think you're hard? They are chaff. I'll rip you apart. He roared out as he kept moving, searching for her. How does one ninja Jap do this? Kill his entire squad? He really wished his reinforcements would show up already. It was pure luck in the end, the faint hint of something glinting in the corner of his optics. He immediately dove into a roll, bringing up his Ajax and firing. The shot from the Nakomata missed him by inches. She was back on the roof, hiding in Triggerfinger's little shack. He lit it up, not stopping the automatic fire until his mag was empty, and he quickly reloaded and started firing again. Nothing. He waited, unable to see well if she was still in there, but not willing to climb the ladder that would take him up to the roof. He waited, and it was only when his optics spotted blood that he started to relax. "Got ya, ha bitch?" He called out with a chuckle as he kept his rifle up. Never relax until the body is confirmed dead. Usually with a double tap. But with how many rounds he had punched into the little shack, she would have to be dead. Surely. A gunshot, and he grunted back as the round slammed into him, his subdermal and chest rig barely stopping the round from blowing a hole through him, but it still knocked him on his ass. He rolled, instantly rushing for cover. How the fuck was she still alive? How are you still alive? He roared, rising, and once more unloading a magazine into the shack. This time he didn't stay still. Using his gunfire to keep her pinned as he climbed up onto some of the old oil barrels that had been laying around since before they moved in. He kept firing as he rose up, enough to actually see into the shed even as he continued firing into his mag emptied. He looked in. Where was she? Triggerfinger was there, looking pretty awful thanks to all the rounds that had ripped through him, but he didn't see the ninja. Wait. If Triggerfinger was dead, why was there an arm sticking out from his body, pointing a handgun right at Frost? The round punctured through this time. His vest wasn't able to stop a second high-caliber round, and his subdermal failed. He died before he hit the ground. I coughed up blood as I pushed the corpse off me. Ow. I whined as I poked the multiple holes in me. Most of them in my legs, one unfortunately in my chest where my poor leotard had finally given up, unable to stop the bullets. Unfortunately, while I was small enough to hide behind the bulk of an armored Borg as rounds hammered into my hidey hole. Even the Borg's armor had to give up eventually. A few rounds penetrating few had slammed into me as the fucker with the Ajax just kept on firing. Jerk. I yanked my med pocket open and grabbed a Mac stock. Quickly inhaling it, I instantly felt better. That was the second one I had to burn. I reminded myself. I only had one left on me. This last Borg was way more skilled than I expected. Plus he had actually taken a Nakomata round to the chest, even if I hadn't had time to charge it up. It had just been a normal round, which was the only reason he hadn't died. I grunted as I pushed the corpse off me. Thanks, Chum. I told him despite how horrible his corpse looked now, he had really saved my tail. I really like it more when I just kill them all without them noticing. I grumble as I grab the fallen Nakomata and head towards the side of the roof. I winced a bit as I dropped down to the ground level. My legs still sore. I guess one Mac stock didn't cover everything. I thought about using another, but I wasn't bleeding anywhere. Better to save it. I sighed. As much as I wanted to call Ichi and try to have him come help loot this place to the bedrock, I knew I didn't have time. The storm leader had mentioned he had called for help. Quick loot Motoko. I told myself with a deep breath as I quickly ran to the first body. As my hands danced through pockets, I called my car, which drove from down the street to stop in front of the open gate. I grabbed the guns and anything else I could find and hold in my arms as I raced to the car and dumped it into the passenger seat before rushing back for more. 2 runs to grab everything outside, and I headed in. Considering the time limit, I raced upstairs first. Netrunner was #1 priority. I wanted to see if he had any net running stuff. As soon as I hit his body, I unfortunately gave up on stealing his net running suit. I didn't have time or desire to strip a corpse like that right now. Instead, I started popping shards out of his skull, passing them into my pocket. I did check his skull, and he did indeed have a net deck. I considered yanking it. I could. It would take a few minutes, but I could totally do that. But something about ripping chrome right out of someone's body. It didn't sit right with me. If I had more time, maybe I would call in the cavalry and they would probably do some ripping, but I let it go. Instead, I focused on his gear. I plugged into his computer and yanked the data into a shard. I would go over it later, but hopefully it would have some information on where I could find the Spider Ripper and the bastard. Then as I started grabbing more goodies, I heard an engine outside. Instantly, I went cold as I dropped everything and headed back to the roof. Whoever was showing up was about to get ripped apart. I had only heard one engine. That meant the numbers were doable. More loot? More loot. I crept along the roof. Whoever it was walking around the courtyard. They were slow, cautious. I couldn't hear any conversation, and only one set of footsteps crunching into the gravel. Only one? Well, it didn't matter. I reached the edge, but I missed them by a second. They had just walked into the building below me. I went full cold just so I wouldn't make a grunt of pain and dropped, falling into a silent crouch just outside the door. My katana was already flashing, red edge arcing through darkness, to give me just a few more points of XP. I stilled. My breath came out in a soft pant. June! I cried out, causing him to jump practically out of his skin, his own katana coming up to as if to defend, only to realize I was standing literally behind him, my katana inches from taking his head. June shrieked in a hilariously girly voice, but once he realized who it was, he gasped in shock. Motoko! Gonna remember that one for later. That scream was hilarious. But now wasn't the time for that. Because June's face hardened and he was glaring now. Motoko! What do you think you are doing? Murder? I answered honestly, before my mind could catch up with my mouth. I clamped my mouth shut as my answer seemed to knock the wind out of June's anger. I looked around, knowing he must have already seen all the dead bodies. All the people I had murdered. We were both silent, staring at each other for a moment, before I lowered my shoulders, sheathing my katana. Okay, let's be honest. I mean, is this even the worst thing you ever caught me doing? I asked, hoping my former pre-coma self really was the hellion I suspected she was. June did not in fact agree. His exasperated expression only lasted a moment before it turned to anger. What are you thinking? What are you even doing? You could have died. You are still recovering. You are. What? Chasing Maelstrom around the city. He roared after a sound of pure frustrated anger as he turned and hammered a fist into the wall of the garage. The poor garage did not stand up well. How did you even find me? I interrupted his battering of the poor garage. I followed your tracker. What else would I do when you sneak out in the middle of the night? I blinked. I have a tracker? I frowned. That was not okay. Of course Oka-san gave us both trackers when we were kids. He answered, simply going silent for a moment at the mention of our mother. You don't remember? I felt my lips down into a frown. The idea that I had some tracker in me was. I really didn't like it. At the same time, it wasn't June's fault, so I just breathed it out. I would get back to that later. Before I could even start on what was next though. We both heard it, engines. We need to go. Let's run. We both said to each other before rushing towards the exit. The engines were too close. Chapter 34. By the time we hit the gate, we both realized what happened. Slowing to a stop, surrounding my car and June's bike, both blocking the entrance to the gate, were 3 Maelstrom trucks. Already I could see the red-eyed Borgs climbing out to look around. Cover me. I called out as I rushed forward. Barry had drawn and aimed, and only when they noticed me did I fire. 3 rounds echoed, sending Borgs scurrying as I rushed to my car. While my shots had sent a few running for cover, a few of the Borgs were starting to aim at me, so I did the smart thing. I put up my arms to guard my face and jumped into the still open passenger door, ignoring the stray bullets slammed into my arms. I reached down under my passenger seat for a box that I had filled from the Raffen raid, and never really used. Popping it open, I started grabbing grenades. I glanced out the door, seeing June in full rage mode as he offhanded Shingen, a smart SMG that I didn't even know he had. It must collapse down or something. Still he was shooting mini missiles into the crowd, roaring and drawing attention. Stupid June. He was gonna get shot doing that. I flipped the switches, pressed the buttons, or pulled the pin for the grenades as I started chucking them wildly out of the car towards the Maelstrom trucks. It took a moment and then the explosions started going off, and the screams and cries of dying Maelstrom finally overrode the sound of gunfire. I turned back towards June to tell him to get on his Kusanagi and get out of here, but he had already unsheathed his katana and was going wild on the now utterly disrupted Maelstrom. One of their trucks was burning from an incendiary grenade, highlighting the fight as he rushed in and started cutting. Well, if he wanted to murder all of these Maelstrom, I wasn't going to be left behind. I slipped out of my car, katana drawn, and moved, quickly leaping up onto the hood of my car and then forward to cut the arm off a Maelstrom gonk aiming a shotgun at June. The thermal blade cut right through, and his head was parted a moment later before he could even scream with a casual swipe. Then I was among them, and between June and I? The grenades having thrown them around, killing or maiming? It was wheat to a scythe. June drew their eyes, the Oni. I could practically taste their terror as he kept among them, not letting them get any clear shots as he cut them into pieces with pure power. While that happened, I ghosted them. Heads parted from necks, limbs were lost suddenly, and then lives a moment later. While I did get shot again, this time in the back, the fucker lost his arm and then head a moment later. While June was just tanking everything. By the time I caught up to June, it was over. He was dueling a large Borg with a nasty-looking sawn-off shotgun fit for a cyborg, and a chainsword of all things trying to keep June from bisecting him. Unfortunately, I don't believe in honorable duels. The Borg died in moments after my katana surged out the front of his neck as I stabbed him through his spine. My face a rictus grin as I managed to steal from June. I was laughing, my cold breaking as June practically jumped at my sudden appearance once again. I could see him instantly look around, but I threw him a thumbs up. I confirmed kills on everyone else. We're clear, I told him. His eyes continued to rove around as if he didn't fully believe me, which was fair, always good to verify yourself. But yeah, I killed them all. The fools half blown up by grenades. The ones desperately trying to run. The gonks that tried to attack me. I cut them all down. Between the fires and June it was easy. They were so shell-shocked I waltzed through them like a ghost. We should probably grab what we can and go. I told him only to see he wasn't just breathing hard but actually wincing. I quickly pushed in and with deft fingers found the problem. Right through the subdermal. I told him after got his hands away from the bullet hole in his thigh. Thanks, I hadn't noticed. He growled a bit, but a moment later he had a Mac stock in his mouth. Take that, and hop in the car. Send your bike home without you, you can't drive like that. It's a bullet hole. I can ride just fine. He grumbled, but I wasn't having any of that and quickly pulled him along his limping steps, unable to resist as I pulled him towards the passenger seat of my ride. I winced a little at how much junk was now strewn across it, but he sighed and settled in as I threw a roll of bandages I had in my medical pouch at him as I raced back to the driver's side. Buckle up, I reminded him as I hammered the gear and hit the gas, instantly roaring down the street, causing June to yelp as I absolutely floored it. Had to get June back to the dojo. He was bleeding. Slow down. No. I barked back as I zipped through the city, absolutely flooring my engine. The mostly empty streets, thanks to all the shootings, meant I rarely had to slow for traffic, and so I raced through the city more like I was playing. Well, Cyberpunk. Well, if the driving in the game was any good anyways. Please slow down. He begged as I came up to a red light with a bit of traffic. We were in a busier section, lots of bars and clubs around here, and even with a gang war people were still partying. His pleading switched to Japanese and I honestly couldn't keep up, as I slipped in between two cars idling at the red, flowed into a drift, barely sliding right behind a truck, my front bumper almost kissing the rear of the bumper before I slipped around the truck and cut in front of it before flooring it, disappearing down the street with a roar of my quadra's engine. Please, please, please slow down. He begged and I scoffed. We were almost there. Just a few smaller side streets that were covered in little shops. Most were closed and empty. I didn't even slow down as I flew down the darkened street. The few people I could see hearing me coming and getting out of the way, which was smart. I came around the corner of the dojo in a rush and only slowed a tiny bit as I drifted down into the parking garage for the apartment complex. I quickly found a space and slowed to gently park into one close to the elevator to the first floor. "Come on, June, let's get you to your Ripper," I told him as I jumped out of the car to run around towards his side. He was already climbing out when I reached him, and as I tried to get close to help him, his hand reached out and pushed my face away. "Juan. Motoko. Stop smothering me. Also, you are never allowed to drive again. Ever," he told me as he started walking, just with a hefty limp, towards the elevator. "That's not fair. I'm pretty good at driving." Terrifying. Everyone complains about me driving slow, but when I actually drive fast, you complain too. I argued as I kept with him, happy to use the conversation to keep him distracted. "That's because no one knows how terrifying you driving fast is. Where did you even learn to drive like that?" "Playing around mostly," I answered truthfully. "From a certain point of view, terrifying." He deadpanned as he rested back against the elevator, seemingly exhausted. "Oh. Right. June had been awake all day, fought with me. Fought during the kamikaze raid, and then chased me out too. Dang." I actually felt super sorry for him now. "Let's get you into the Ripper and get you a nap. You look tired," I told him as I sidled up to him, resting my head on his shoulder for a moment. "I wonder why that is?" He snarked at me, seemingly too tired to get angry. "Huh, I guess Sleepy June is Snarky June." I opened my mouth to respond but closed it. I hadn't really needed June, but I understood it was difficult for him to understand just what I could do. What a gamer was capable of. "Thanks for coming to help me, June. I promise I won't run off in the middle of the night again. I'll let you know when I go out, so you..." "Well, you'll probably still worry, but at least I won't just vanish on you." June's hands clenched, but then loosened. "When you killed that last Strom, you were laughing." "Yeah. I was having fun. We work well together. You just need to work on getting shot less," I told him, resisting the urge to poke at him with a finger. He was injured, so I wasn't going to poke his bullet wounds. That would be rude, even if the urge to mess with my brother was almost irresistible. "I didn't believe you before. When you said you enjoyed it." I scratched at my cheek, a bit embarrassed, as June was staring at me as the elevator came to a stop. "Yeah, well, I guess it's just one of those things. I'm good at it. Plus I have my own reasons to enjoy killing them." "Yeah." He was quiet as he hobbled out, my attempts to help more getting in his way than really helping. As I tried to get him to the window that we could climb out of. It was a bit difficult, but we managed to get him through, and the vendors on the other side quickly noticed and actually helped out, not saying a word as they took an arm and helped June into the dojo's side entrance and downstairs into the Ripper clinic. "What the?" "Kusanagi." The female Ripper was sitting at a chair and jumped up when June was carried in. She took a moment to look me over as well. I was still covered in blood, but I waved her towards June, and she didn't need any further prompting to ignore me. He was settled onto the Ripper chair, and she went to work cleaning the bullet holes and starting to work. I settled onto a normal chair nearby and decided to hang out. It wasn't like I was gonna do anything but go take a nap when I got back to the room anyways. Might as well make sure June is okay. June basically started napping as the doc worked. She was alright, but she didn't have that amazing deftness that Vic had. I really should have just hauled him to Vic's. "Kusanagi." A voice called out just as soon as the door opened, and Fujimura stomped in. The guy was a bit bleary-eyed, and his hair was messy. "I guess someone woke him up. Fujimura-sama." June responded, his eyes snapping open, and he made to sit up only to be pushed down by the doc. "Stay down while I work," she demanded, glaring, before giving a sitting bow to Fujimura, seemingly letting him know he could continue. "I didn't set up any further raids. The battle was over. I thought I was clear that you were supposed to be resting. Now I find out you went out and got injured. You damage not just yourself, but the kamikaze. Explain." He barked, stomping up to June, and I got the feeling he was only seconds away from dragging June out of the chair by his. Well, June didn't have a shirt on, but the same idea stood. June of course spoke quickly, before I could. "Apologies. A family matter came up. Fujimura instantly looked to me, his eyes glaring and face full of rage. Of course I wasn't impressed. Bedhead wasn't exactly intimidating. You once again caused trouble? I didn't do anything. June was just being overprotective and decided to I was cut off as the man actually backhanded me. He hit me. It almost knocked me right out of the chair, considering how strong he was. I could practically feel a tooth loosen as well as I sat back up. I wiggled my jaw a bit and spit out some of the blood onto the floor. Stupid idiot made me bite my cheek. I went cold. No, I went Arctic. I caught his eyes and held them as I spoke. You strike me again, and I'll take the hand. He watched me for a moment before snorting. Accept your punishment with grace. You damage the kamikaze with your foolishness? You receive a reminder. Your brother is important to the Tiger Claws. Important to kamikaze. You were brought here by our kindness, but that is twice now you have cost the kamikaze. Fujimura-sama. Motoko is my sister. She is not yours to discipline. June growled. He had sat up when I was struck. Much to the irritation of the doc. Then ensure that she does not damage the kamikaze again, and I will not feel the need to interfere in family affairs. The man barked back without any give. Motoko did nothing wrong. Fujimura-sama. It was my own weakness that led to injury. June said, barely keeping his voice from an angry bark as he glared up at the Borg. The man finally turned from my stare, which was dangerous of him. I was still figuring out whether dismembering him would be the best way to get my point across. I expect a fast recovery, Kusanagi. The kamikaze have work to do. He finally said after a few moments of imperious glaring, before he stomped out of the room. June. Your boss is an asshole. I finally told him, which caused my brother to slowly lean back onto the chair with a groan. Once June was fully fixed up, he fell asleep with a few meds from the doc. Considering he was passed out and practically drooling, I decided to head back to the apartment. But not before taking a picture of his drooling face. Blackmail, get. The silliness helped soothe the irritation and the pain of my cheek. I walked into the apartment and only once the door closed did I sigh. I was still hurting. Bullets might get blocked by the armor, and I was mostly healed up from the max doc, but I was still sore. Plus the worst part? Ugh, all the blood dried. I grumbled as I ran a few fingers through my hair only to get tangled in the bloody matted strands. I wouldn't be able to take a nap without cleaning up first. So with a tired grunt I walked into the apartment's little bathroom that also had a washer-dryer. I stripped down to my panties and stuffed the dirty clothes into the washer, noticing my boots were going to need some serious attention too. Dang it. So as I started the cycle, I grabbed some cleaning gunk and sat down in front of the washer with my boots. Slowly wiping the poor abused footwear, clean of dirty maelstrom blood. At least one benefit of being in such a hellish future is that bloodstains weren't an issue. The cleaning gunk I rubbed into the boots pulled the blood right out. Groaning, as my shoulders ached, I headed into a shower and dunked my head into the nice hot water for a moment, stretching a bit to start scrubbing the blood off. I zoned out for a bit, just letting the heat flow into my bones, and my arms. Cyberware felt cool to the skin and the night was getting cooler. So feeling the metal warm under the spray was actually pretty nice. My chest always feels a little chilly now with the cyberware installed. But right now it felt good, even if water flowing over my arms felt wrong. Which reminded me about what I had gained tonight. I couldn't help but whistle as I opened the alerts. I hadn't checked, between looting and then June. The XP gains went down for a while. But it was the level I had gained that I was smiling about. 3 levels in one night. I giggled a little as I did a little dance under the shower. Hell yeah, level up achieved. 1 stat point gained. 1 skill point gained. I giggled as I looked at the alert. Glancing at my stat page, just to see where I am at. Level 8. 2500/9000. Very nice. Plus the 3 stat and skill points that were saved up. But that wasn't even close to everything. So many improvements. Athletics skill level up. It was midway down the list, so I guess all the running and jumping around I had done had some benefits. Athletics 6 was awesome. Handgun skill level up. Handguns had gone up to 6, which made sense. I had been firing the Beria so much lately. It really was an integral part of my toolkit. I really needed to take her apart and give her a thorough checkup. Even happier for me was Assault. Assault 4, thanks to my new Nakomata. I finally had a good weapon for leveling that skill. While Ninjutsu and Cool itself didn't level, Cold Blood had gone up to 7. Matching up with Ninjutsu. So that was fun. Less pain for me was a good thing. Then I blinked. Then I blinked again. Then I dug into the alert list to figure out what the hell happened. This doesn't make any sense. Stupid system. I want to talk to an admin. I want a refund. I screeched a bit as practically jumped up and down in anger. Engineering experience gained. Skill not unlocked, no XP gained. Engineering unlocked. Engineering skill level up. Engineering skill level up. 1 perk point gained. I didn't build anything. But apparently grenades counted for engineering. What? How does that work? I had definitely used grenades before. Why was I only now getting XP for engineering if they were connected to that? I thought back to the last time I had used grenades, and I had to go all the way to the Scav raid. That's right, I had brought a few with me. Then I remembered how often the damn things were kicked back at me. Did I not actually hit anyone with a grenade? No, I had. The two at the end, the ones hiding in the computer room, I remembered throwing the grenade in and then leaping in after to shoot them. But they had been hiding in cover. I hadn't actually hit anyone with a grenade until now. I pushed my back up against the side of the shower and slid down it, groaning. If I had known that I could level engineering by killing people with grenades, I could have done so much. Now that I had accepted the alert, I could feel the information sliding in, and it was dense. Which was weird, because usually the knowledge came right then, but I guess engineering was so dense, it waited until it was out of combat. Well, I guess the system wasn't too bad then. I would hold off on my demand for refunds for now. Besides, Motoko likes numbers. I blinked away water as I came back to myself after who knows how long when the washing machine beeped. I did a quick shampoo wash of my hair to make sure the blood was out, before jumping out of the shower and throwing my clothes into the dryer. Grabbing a few towels to start drying off, I wandered onto the couch and opened up the menu again. I hadn't gained any other stat increases. I had been hoping for a reflex improvement, but it hadn't come. Plenty of alerts for it, and it was getting close, but I wasn't there yet. Which opened up the next question. What do I spend my stat and skill points on? To start, I already knew where my stat points would go. A few button presses, and I was on the adaptation page. Militech Condor adaptation, Militech Condor, 0 out of 10. I didn't hesitate. Not this time. Pushing the button. Spend 1 stat point to improve adaptation? Y/N. I hit the yes option, and instantly the numbers changed. Militech Condor adaptation, Militech Condor 1/10. I shivered. Not from the cold, the apartment was just fine, and I was warm from the shower. No, I shivered because the phantom limb I had been fighting against since I got my arms stopped. I had gotten, well, not used to it, but I got to the point I could move my arm without it throwing me off. And now? Now it was gone. I let out a noisy sigh as I flopped back on the couch. Well, that felt nice. I brought my arm up to my face and opened and closed a fist. So much was still off. The sensations were wrong. The fact it was the wrong length, or that my fingers settled in the wrong spot, still nagged at me, made me feel like something was off. But now at least it felt like mine. I opened the page, adding another point. Militech Condor adaptation, Militech Condor, 2 out of 10. Muscles in my back unclenched. My shoulders, all mechanical at this point, shifted, settling differently. I gasped, an exhale of relief. I hadn't even realized I had kept my shoulders tense, trying to force them into the same position my old arms would have been, but the Condor had longer shoulders. I realized I had literally been hunching up on myself for days. I relaxed and it felt right? No. Normal. It felt normal. For the first time since I woke up on the Ripper's chair, I felt slightly normal. That little part of you that unclenches after something terrible, when your body and mind finally realize everything is going to be okay. I was going to be okay. I swallowed a little as I threw my forearm over my eyes. June was here, but I didn't want anyone to see me crying. Tears started falling and I very quickly started sobbing, crying, an ugly noise escaping me as I let the pain that had infested me. Made me so angry, and made me want to just stay cold forever slowly seep away. As I felt my heart unfreeze fully for the first time. I hadn't even realized I had been doing it. How could I? Cold blood wasn't just some weird gamer power, it was a skill. Knowledge that I was practically a master at. It was the equivalent to spending years and years hardening your heart. Freezing your emotions so that nothing could interfere with your thoughts. Of course the trauma would make me fall back on it, even subconsciously. It wasn't like I could split where Motoko ends, and the knowledge I had gained through the system began. There was no difference. It was my knowledge and experience. I just had a lot of weird skills. Extra experience. So I finally subconsciously relaxed, felt safe. So I let it go, and so I bawled. The stress and horror of what happened. My worry for June, and just the pain all pouring out of me. I cried and I cried. Until finally, I just couldn't anymore. Thankfully, I was already wrapped up in a towel, so I was able to wipe my now gooey arm, and my gooier face. Blowing my nose loud and wetly let me breath again as I stood up. I went back to the laundry room, and threw both towels in, after quickly washing my face, and my arm. I felt good. Cathartic. I grabbed some comfy old clothes out of what June had grabbed from the apartment and flopped onto the couch. I turned on the TV and just switched it to some cartoon channel. Something mindless. I got comfy as it played. As I looked at the stat menu again, I still had one stat point left. I thought about it. I could use it for reflex, which was a struggle to level, or tech, which would be great. But this was more important. I wasn't some idiot edge runner wanting to burn out in a blaze of glory. I wasn't. I really wasn't. I wanted to live, because you can't have fun when you die. So I decided I would spend it on adaptation again. But not to my arms. Spend one stat point to improve adaptation? I accepted, and my stats changed. Kuroshi MK1 adaptation, Kuroshi MK11/2. I blinked. Then I blinked again. Then again. It was still weird, but that cold sensation of my eyelids flowing over a waterproof eye didn't bother me as much. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't like much was. But when I closed my eyes, it didn't feel uncomfortable. It didn't make me itch or want to leave my eyes open all night. Without my auto-sleep, I very likely would not have been able to sleep well with my Kuroshi. But now? I relaxed curled up in a big fluffy blanket watching cartoons. I dozed off, for the first time in a while, sleeping peacefully without needing to insta-sleep. ZZZZZZ. Chapter 35. Wuzza? I mumbled as I startled awake at the sound of a door opening. I sat covered in blankets, and one eye caked shut cold drool on my chin, which I quickly wiped away. Real cute. June told me dryly as he caught sight of my sleepy face. Jerk. I snapped at him, cut off by a big yawn as I stretched arm high and wide, letting the muscles in my upper back stretch out a bit. It wasn't like stretching my cyberware mattered. Although I did notice my right arm wasn't right. But it wasn't the usual discomfort. I glanced at it and noticed the dent. Right. I had gotten shot last night in the arm. Which reminded me about someone else being shot. June? Are you all healed up? Mostly. He confirmed, plopping down on the couch beside me and peeling his burrito from a wrapper. I'm glad. I told him gently as he took a big bite. Sorry I didn't come back, I was gonna, but, well, I had my own little thing. I told him quietly with a smile as I relaxed my shoulders, getting to feel my arms settle. It wasn't how they would have settled before, but it was how they settled now, and that fact didn't bother me so much right then. You okay? He mumbled from between bites, and I gave him a smile and a nod. Yep. I had a big cry. Everything sort of hit me last night. But I'm feeling a lot better. Good. That's good. He told me quietly, and while I could feel the emotion in his voice, he was definitely fighting back another emotion. You want to talk about me running off last night? I prompted, and I could see him take a deep breath and let it out. Yeah. I do. Okay. I'm not going anywhere. So let's really talk, June. I rose up off the couch, pulling my blanket with me to flop on the other side of the table as I settled in, letting us talk face to face. He was quiet for a while as he chewed, but the way he was staring, I knew he was thinking. You didn't need me last night. Maybe. Maybe not. I shrugged, a weird feeling now that I was holding my shoulders lower. I was looting when you showed up, but I might have gotten greedy and stuck around too long. Motoko. You didn't need me. He said bluntly, sounding sad as he put the empty burrito wrapper on the table. You handle yourself like a pro. I left you behind during the raid because I didn't want you there. I didn't want you in danger. But you still caught up. You still killed. I hated it. I hate it. Seeing you do that. Putting blood on your hands. But no matter what I do, you're still gonna do it. Yeah. I confirmed with a sad smile as I looked at my brother really fighting himself. June wasn't an emotional guy. At least not like this. He was a hothead. Not an empathetic thinker. But he was trying. I can't stop you. I want to. I would kill anyone to stop you, but that won't change anything. You will still do what you want. Just like always. He sighed, his hands seemingly not able to sit still as he kept opening and closing them, or pushing them together. I'm scared, Motoko. Scared that you will get hurt. I can't protect you if you put yourself in danger. His leg was bouncing as he started talking me up and down in a rapid succession. I'm scared for you too, June. But I can't stop you. You joined the kamikaze, which... Man, that name has some connotations. I grumbled. But I have to trust you. I have to believe you will stay safe, because I can't. I can't physically stop you. And I can't physically stop you. He agreed, the two of us looking each other over with matching quirks of our lips. What a pair we make, had Juni. Yamamoto. He chuckled a little, actually sounding like. Well, June. Before everything. A real pair. We both have a death wish. No, I told him instantly, standing up and reaching across the table to put both my hands on his cheeks. Not a death wish. Just a bloody path ahead of each of us. It's not a death wish. We might die. We might not. But Juni. I promise. I won't throw my life away. If I die, it will be doing something I believe is right. And maybe something I love. 'Cause I do like it. Little killer. He finally said with a huffed-out laugh as he reached forward, and suddenly I wasn't standing on the other side of the table. No, I was squeezed tight against June's chest as he held me. I laughed, and hugged him back. We were both broken. Maybe even crazy. But the world was crazy too. So we would survive. Ow. I growled as I zapped myself once again. After the nice long hug from June, and a bit of sibling bonding, June had gone into his room to take a nap, still tired from the drugs and his bullet holes, while I went to work on my newest skill. Engineering. With engineering, my crafting had suddenly linked with the knowledge and had exploded. Two halves of the same coin. Crafting was slapping shit together. How good are you at physically making something? Do you know the right tolerances, the right diameter to make something just work? But engineering? Engineering was planning. Design. Engineering was creation. It was the difference between the tinker in his home lab shaving away a few millimeters on something to make it work better, to the engineer that designed the whole thing in a lab. Together they synced. I was both of those people. The creator, and the end user. Plus with my other skills I was the operator. How many people could say they were a true Renaissance woman? I could do it all. Although I still couldn't paint. So with just how flexible my knowledge was, first step was to mess with my equipment. I had done some tinkering with my guns already, but I had a lot to do. First I went out to the car and grabbed all the loot from the Maelstrom garage. The Nakomata was first. I had looked it over, but there wasn't much I could change. The previous user knew his gun. It was a solid piece of work. The modifications it had were all solid improvements. At least for now. Instead, I had a bunch of tech scrap that I already had ideas for. If I was going to level engineering, I might as well do it easily. Grenades. An explosive, a trigger, and a casing. Honestly, with my 3D printer, I could make everything but the explosives, but those were easy. I had stolen a bunch of grenade stuff from the Raffen base, and now I was actually motivated to use it. The shard I clept that had the crazy grenade Raffen's tips and tricks on how to create grenades was actually easy to understand with my engineering knowledge, which is why I was putting together homemade grenades. After half a dozen frag grenades, I decided that a couple EMP grenades might be really useful. The discharge for it was pretty standard stuff. I grab a battery that I could find in most devices, and basically set it into a supercharger that would cause it to explode, put that in a case, and set it all up from a button. Voila, EMP grenade. I guess that says a lot about power sources in Cyberpunk, that with a few modifications, you could turn them into a dangerous explosive. Honestly, the scrap metal I had was running low, considering how simple grenade interiors were. What the hell is that? June said, suddenly looking at me from the door, his fire hair limp and sticking out at weird angles from a nap. Grenade. He blinked. Then he blinked again as he looked down towards the wires that I was holding in my hands as I was wiring up an EMP grenade. Not in the house. It's safe. Not in the house. He said again, before slowly backing back into his room. Fine. I grumbled as I undid all the wiring, before tossing the grenades in pieces back into my parts section. Not about to leave an unfinished halfway put together grenade in my box. That's stupid. But now I had nothing to do. The Maelstrom would all be sleeping with the sun still up. I blinked. Why did I think I had nothing to do? I had a car. A city, friends. That's right. I had friends. I snorted at myself. I had been so stressed out, so focusing on killing, I had practically forgotten. I stood up and stretched, feeling the play of muscles in my back loosen up from my hunched over position. Hey June. I'm gonna go see Hiromi. June's head popped out of his room a moment later as he instantly looked to the table. Not seeing whatever he was looking for, he seemed to relax. You shouldn't be running around. It's dangerous out there. Hiromi is stuck at home, at least last I talked to her. I'll go visit. My car is armored, so unless I'm jumped by an entire attack squadron of Strom, I'll be fine. Besides, I should probably get out and do something other than hyper-focus on the Maelstrom. I threw June a thumbs up and gave him a big smile. I'll be careful. He slowly nodded as he stepped out, walked over, and to my surprise pulled me into a hug. He ended it nearly instantly without a word as he walked into the kitchen to grab a drink. Love you too, June. I called back as I ran around gathering some stuff. Mostly my jacket and guns. I did decide to bring my katana though. Maybe Hiromi and I could practice? A few blocks away from the dojo, I called Hiromi. Motoko. Are you okay? Everything alright? Hey Hiromi. I'm okay. How are you? Still stuck at home? Yeah. My rents are still super protective right now, she said, but there was something in her voice, a tremor, or I wasn't sure. Want to hang out? Yes. Save me, Motoko. I'm so bored, Well, I'm on my way over. I can tell you what I've been up to, Perfect. Seriously, it's been the worst. Both of my parents are working from home to avoid any gang problems. Hiromi started chattering, which was actually pretty soothing as I continued the drive. By the time I was pulling into a parking spot in Hiromi's apartment's garage, she seemed normal, happy and chattering away. I guess she really had been lonely. I shouldn't have let myself spiral into my own issues. Hiromi was my chum. Being stuck inside, practically locked away all day? That sucked. We ended the call as I parked, and I hurried to the elevator. The long wait as it rose up had me tapping my foot, but finally it opened, and there was Hiromi already rushing me. Motoko! She cried out in delight as she slammed into me in a massive hug. I couldn't help but laugh as I had to spin her around a few times to bleed off the momentum. Finally, her feet were back on the floor and she looked me over for a moment looking at my new arms. I brought my right arm up and flexed a bit. It's taken a bit to get used to, but I'm starting to feel comfortable with them. Hiromi wasn't smiling though. Her smile had turned into a frown before she shook herself, which is when I noticed her hair wasn't in her usual mohawk. Instead, it was sort of laid down, much more casual than I had ever seen her hair. And her neon whisker marks weren't on, leaving her cheeks chrome, but sort of bare. But I knew something was wrong when she tried to smile at me. Only for it to fold. I'm sorry. I wasn't there, He. It's okay, honestly. I actually started feeling better about it last night. I had a cry last night. I revealed, a little embarrassed. Gonk. She whispered gently, as she was obviously fighting back tears, but she took a deep breath and let it out. She reached out and grabbed my hand and started pulling me along. Come on, we can hang out in my room, and you can tell me everything. Sure. I chirped as I was tugged along. Hiromi was shorter than me, but she tugged me along without any trouble. Her wild girl was showing a bit of a return. That was good. Hiromi was acting weird. I was tugged into her big fancy apartment, past her mother, who was looking on to see what was going on with a blank look. I gave her a wave and she simply nodded before Hiromi pulled me fully into her room. She spun me around and pushed me onto her bed before closing her door. Tell me everything. She demanded, standing over me with her hands on her hips, and I giggled at her expression. Sure. So it started when June came home. We ended up sprawled on her bed as I told my story. Halfway through my story, Hiromi had grabbed my hand and refused to give it back. Now she was running her fingers along my chrome, which felt weird, ticklish? But not. I hadn't really had many people touch me gently since I got my arms, besides June, and his arms were just as chrome as mine. So to feel actual human flesh running a finger up my palm was really strange. Goosebumps were running all along my back. Wish I had been there. She muttered finally as I finished my story of everything I had done. I don't. I told her bluntly. Outnumbered and outgunned, I tried to run and I couldn't make it. It was a hit squad. I'm just lucky they were stupid enough to kidnap me, and not just flatline me then and there. I said, and Hiromi's fingers gripped hard against my hand. You're my best chum, Motoko. You can't die, okay? She spoke quietly as she grabbed my attention with how desperate her voice was. I have no intention of having a drink named after me in the afterlife. I told her, not really able to promise not to die. I'll be as safe as I can be. Huh. No way, when you do finally bite it, they will definitely give you a drink. You're gonna be a bad bitch edge runner. And I'll be your cunning and beautiful corpo contact that no one can be sure is on their side. Hiromi offered with a chuckle, but I was frowning. Hiromi had never in the time I had known her said she was going to be a corpo. Ever. Quite the opposite, in fact. Hiromi? I asked, voice quiet, and she just sort of looked away. It's nothing, Toko. Just everything. But I smelled a problem, so I didn't let up. I squeezed her hand back and tugged her hand until she looked up. Finally she spoke. It started with parent stuff. Them being here constantly means well, I'm forced to deal with them constantly now. Not like before. Dad was always away before, but having him constantly in my face. Telling me what I am going to do in the future. Showing me his work and what to do. But it's not that. She visibly swallowed as she curled up, her legs pulling up to her chest as she held my hand like a lifeline. I went out. She said quietly in a whisper. It was late, and I just wanted to rebel, I guess. I snuck outside, and jumped on my bike, and I went for a drive. It was fine at first. I had my katana, and I was stupid. Confident. I didn't even think anything could happen. Did someone hurt you? I practically growled, my eyes narrowed, and I could feel my teeth grinding. If someone hurt Hiromi. Now she shook her head, which nearly instantly poured water over the black rage building up. It's pathetic. I can't even dash. She was definitely starting to cry a bit, but that was not okay. Hey. It's okay. Hiromi, what's got you so bothered? Tell me? Best chums don't judge best chums. I assure her as I did my best to comfort her. Suddenly she was shaking her head, looking down at her knees, but she started talking, never taking her eyes away from the ground. I got scared. I was driving along, thinking I was some bad bitch. A gunfight started up. Wasn't even Tiger Claws or Maelstrom. Just some stupid fuckbags robbing some store getting shot at. I drove past as they started shooting. Scared the absolute shit of me. I jerked, lost control, crashed my bike. I wasn't hurt, but I hit Motoko. Just gunshots near me sent me hiding in a fucking dumpster. I don't really know how long I was hiding. Eventually I got together enough to get back on my bike and ride home. She looked up, tears in her eyes as she revealed her story. I'm a coward, Motoko. I couldn't go out and actually be a street kid. I'm just a corpo brat after all. That's all I'll ever be. But I'm complaining about stupid shit. You're the one that got kidnapped again, and had horrible things happen. I just had to take a shower when I got Hodash. I ignored Hiromi's attempts to push away from her problems, and instead squeezed her into a tight hug. You're wrong. There is nothing wrong, or shameful about being scared. I whisper into her hair as I hold her, and absolutely refuse to release her, until she gives in and starts hugging me back. Ichi went out, Malcolm went out. You went out. I couldn't, Motoko. I thought with you back everything would be great, we would be a duo, but I can't. I'm a coward, how can I be your partner if I can't even go outside? Well, then you can be my fixer. Hiromi snorted, and then started chuckling until she laughed and laughed as she hugged me back. Gonk. Nope. I'm a best chum. I tell her, earning more giggles as she nods along. That's true, I guess. It's okay. That Hiromi. You're my first friend. And I say that as someone who literally had amnesia and only knew June in the whole world. You came in and made friends with me, remember? No matter what you choose to do, or choose to be, I'll always be your best chum. Even if I have to sneak into Ariska Tower to hang out with you at work. Or if you are my go-to fixer, or just my go-to couch, to crash on and play games and watch bad movies. She started crying again. Chapter 36. Hiromi eventually calmed down and we just hung out for a while as she recovered. Eventually, she felt better and wiped her eyes, and like a switch, we were back to happy Hiromi. Or at least Hiromi that pretended to be happy. We were interrupted while Hiromi was telling me about how her online classes were when suddenly her bedroom door opened. Hiromi. Mom. It's called knocking. I know you know how to do it. Hiromi snapped as she sat up, but didn't let go of my hand. We are having dinner, your father is eating with us. Motoko. You are welcome to join us. She offered to me, her eyes hyper-focusing on me for a moment before she stepped in, approaching Hiromi and reaching down to wipe a bit at Hiromi's face with her thumb. You should wash up first. Never show them weakness, Hiromi, a put-together face is an armor all on its own. She said before standing up and leaving without another word. Your mom is a little intense. I whispered. Yeah. Hiromi grumbled as sat up. But she is right, I should clean up a bit. She finally pulled away from me as she rose. Stomping over to a connected bathroom. The light turning on let me see the insides of her bathroom, and I could only roll my eyes. It was very Hiromi. Tiger claw stickers littered her mirror, and there was a ton of hair stuff that let her wear her typical mohawk. plus piles and piles of makeup. That looked mostly unused, but stacked up like towers. She didn't do much, just washed her face a bit to get rid of the tear tracks, and she was back out, looking, well, like she had been crying a bit, but more firm. Hungry? You can Delta if you don't want to deal with the rents. I'll come. I haven't met your dad yet. Oh yeah, you don't remember meeting him. That's gonna be interesting. Hiromi said, sounding like it would be anything but. I followed her out of her room, adjusting my holsters a bit to settle more comfortably as I headed into the massive dining room. A steaming dinner was already set out, with 4 spots. As I walked in, a pair of men wearing suits were packing up a cart that they had brought the food in on, and were heading out. I guess this complex was ritzy enough to have room service. Come on Motoko, sit here. Hiromi guided me to a spot and pushed me in as she took the next closest spot, scooting her chair and food over so she was closer. Ah, there is Hiromi's friend. A slick voice called out from behind me as I turned. A man wearing a suit stepped out of an office, every piece of him perfectly in place as he walked in and patted Hiromi on the shoulder, smiling in a way that seemed fake. Even Hiromi sent her dad a glare for it, which he seemed to ignore. It was Motoko? Motoko Kusanagi. I introduced myself and he nodded. That's right. That's right, it's been years since I last saw you. Well, you certainly changed your style. My dear lovely wife tells me you have been working as a mercenary? That's a useful job. He offered with a smile that was absolutely fake. But he was also Hiromi's dad. So I just nodded as he and his wife settled into their seats. Yeah. I've been doing some work with Wakako. Mostly minor stuff, some bodyguard work and asset acquisition. I told him, earning a blink from Hiromi at my words, and then Hiromi's dad started laughing. Asset acquisition. An excellent way to put it. You should see what you can do for Arasaka, with that quick wit. His smile didn't reach his eyes, but Hiromi's mother asked Hiromi a question about her schoolwork after that, and I was able to look down at the meal. Looked like something I would have eaten in my past life. Even if the piece of meat that looked like a chunk cut off from a roast was definitely not pork or beef. It looked like it, but the taste was wrong. What about you, Motoko? Any school in your life? Education is important for young girls, you will need it to get anywhere in life. Hiromi's mother asked me suddenly as Hiromi did her best to not answer anything about her own education. Nothing official. I don't go to school exactly, but I'm not sitting around all day. Net running, tinkering, gunsmithing. I dabble a little with everything. I told her after swallowing a bite of mashed potatoes. Definitely not real potato. It tasted like the boxed stuff. Not terrible, and it was at least a familiar taste and texture. Oh? That's a diverse skill set for a girl your age. I find people that try to do everything, end up failing to do anything. Hiromi's father cut in, with a smile. I swear I think the guy just smiled through whatever he was saying or doing just out of habit. I think I focus on everything in a way. I've been interested in robotics with my tinkering. I want to create a drone system for my job. I admit. It was something I had in mind for a while, but it was complicated. Drones in Cyberpunk were amazing, but there was an issue with cost to effectiveness. That and intelligence. Drones? Militech spends billions a year trying to come out with the next great drone system. The problem always comes down to size. Make it smart enough to be useful, and the AI takes up too much room and too much power, so their little drones always balloon in size. Or end up just another drone system needing a big truck to make it work. He said with a shake of his head, True. I do want something closer in size to their flathead, but that is hardly on the open market. I took another bite of mashed potatoes, something I hadn't had since waking up in Night City, but it was the sudden silence that had me look up and notice the narrowed eyes of both adults. Hiromi beside me had noticed something was up, but obviously had as much of a clue as I did. How are you aware of a Militech experimental drone system? Hiromi's father asked casually. I blinked. That's right. The flathead was an experimental item when you get one in 2077. That was why the quest was such a pain. Maelstrom stole one from Militech, which is why you were trying to get it from them. That was in 2077. 2 years early? It was probably still in development. Maybe not even an actualized product. Came across it. It sounded useful, so I've been thinking of making something similar. What exactly do you know about the flathead? Once again that voice of forced casualness made me realize he was digging. It's small, probably remote operated. To bypass the AI size issue. Something about a camo system. I tell him using my hands to give about the size of what the flathead should be. Honestly, it was the size of a smallish dog. Interesting. If you find out any more, or if you happen to have any concrete data, I would be happy to be informed of a competitor's work. I would be happy to pay you for hard data. He said, his eyes locked on mine. He wasn't smiling. I nodded. Sure. If I come across any corpo stuff on my jobs, I'll make sure you can get a look at it. For Hiromi. I answered and finished with another bite of my dinner. Then that fake smile was back on his face. Excellent. Looks like my dear Buttercup made a very useful friend indeed. Excellent work, Hiromi. And here I thought you failed your human resources course. Her father said with a loud laugh as he swallowed a bit of his wine. Hiromi's mother was quiet, just with a small fake smile on her face as well, but her eyes were sharp like a hawk. I did fail it, Dad. Hiromi muttered, irritated. Awkward. Hiromi and I hung out the rest of the day, never talking about anything serious, just playing games, or spending some time with Hiromi painting my nails. Even if you are full chrome now, still gotta look like a bad bitch, Motoko. Besides green and dash. No tiger claw colors. I already have enough issues with June and where I am staying now. Fine. Purple is more your color anyways. She admitted with a grin. But as it grew late, I did leave. Hiromi, still stuck at home, forced me to promise to call and visit more, which I assured her I would. As I walked back to the quadra feeling kinda normal, I couldn't help but smile a bit. Today had been nice. I mean, Hiromi having a meltdown wasn't, but it was nice to be pulled away from Maelstrom. Away from the harsh reality I had been feeling since the Maelstrom kidnapping, and back towards the realization that just because bad stuff happened to me, didn't mean I had to let it control my entire life, that I wanted to be happy. I wanted to enjoy my life. I just had to accept that even through the bad things. I kept that little smile on my face as I made the circuitous route back towards the dojo. June wasn't in the apartment when I got home, and I was tired from the emotional roller coaster with Hiromi, so I just decided to go to sleep. Tomorrow would be a new day. So do you have it? I asked. I wasn't going to hide in the apartment, nor was I going to only head out to murder people. I still had a life to live. That meant going shopping. Interesting request. Sit tight for a few minutes, let me go through my private collection. Yoko said as she adjusted her round glasses. I had traveled to the Dewdrop Inn in order to find a program, but not a netrunning one. The thing was, Netrunner's main job wasn't just throwing out quick hacks or breaking into security. It was data theft. Data was knowledge. And knowledge was power. So since I had finally unlocked engineering, I needed something specific, something I hadn't run across. Turns out the reason why was because CAD, or design programming, was almost always proprietary. Every corp would use its own private program, locked down, and hard-coded. Not that a netrunner couldn't break into that and swipe data, but how often did they steal the entire program itself? Why bother? Netrunners aren't engineers, and the people that want the data have their own program that they use. So here I was, going to the only Netrunner cafe that I really trusted. Yoko being someone at the very least that would hold data for V even after T-Bug died. So she was at least semi-reliable. Hopefully. I looked around the room. The netrunning chairs in the back were both occupied, but they weren't anyone I knew, and I wasn't about to go poking them. So I just sort of hung around as Yoko disappeared into the back of her shop. Thankfully she wasn't gone for too long. I have something. She appeared, saying, putting down a shard case. Arasaka design software. Not a common piece of data, but I did have a copy. she said as she slid it across the desk towards me, hand pinning the shard case to the table. This sort of stuff has plenty of protections. Arasaka won't be happy if they ever find out you used it. I'll keep that in mind. Thanks, Yoko. How much do I owe you? No, this data? Not something eddies can buy. You wanted to be a netrunner? We don't deal in just eddies. Information. Data. Something useful. She slid down her dark sunglasses as she said it. Her hand was still on the shard case. Waiting. Fuck. I wasn't a normal netrunner. It wasn't like I practiced by sneaking into corpo systems, stealing little bits and pieces of data. I was a gamer. I just grinded. But then I remembered. My hands instantly went to my pouches, pulling out bits and bobs. Mostly ammo. Okay, like a lot of ammo. One pouch for my Beria, another for my Unity. Lexington. For my Lexington. I even had some shotgun shells in another, but then in that pouch I found my goal. A handful of shards without a case were spilled across the counter. There they are, I said happily as I brushed the shotgun shells off the shards and pushed them towards Yoko. All I got was an upturned eyebrow in turn. I klepped these off a Maelstrom netrunner the other night. He was solid, full gear, full setup. His security was tight. I did check them, but they didn't have what I was looking for. But it was full of his net logs, dash. I'll accept it, she said, interrupting me, but I could tell it was more out of pity than interest. Her lips were twitching a bit, despite the way she was squeezing them together a bit. She was laughing at me. I'll, keep an eye out for data you'll like, I offered. I didn't really like when people thought I was a novice. I mean, I was, but only because grinding netrunner stuff was difficult, but soon I would be amazing. Good. Get out of here, kid. Happy net running, she said as she gathered up the shards, leaving me a moment to put everything back in my pouches. I slipped the shard into one of my emptier pocket pouches, tugging on it to make sure it was sealed. Didn't want to lose that. As I stepped out onto the Kabuki roundabout, I took a moment to just look around. It was emptier than usual, much emptier in fact, but even during a gang war, Night City has to continue on. Walking around the structure to head towards where I had parked, I passed some people still willing to go out and do their job, or just willing to shop. In fact, I slowed at a little food stand and had a cup of some noodle thing in a styrofoam cup to eat out of as I continued my walk, which was when I was suddenly stopped as a Mox girl stomped out in front of me. The kitsch clothing, well, what there was of it anyways. In pastel. The tattoos, despite her young age, all told me she was definitely Mox. The glare was weird though. You're Nox's savior, right? Purple hair, a leotard, and plenty of hardware. That fits you to a T, she said abruptly as she practically invaded my personal space. I blinked, looking around, noticing the girl had been at a table full of Mox, all of them looking curiously at what their friend was up to. It took me a moment to parse out what she had said as she forced me to switch gears from relaxing to talking. Wha? Nox? Yeah, I know him. I wouldn't really say savior though, it was just some bullying. Well, it was kind of fucked to ghost him like that. I know he is a bit of a pain in the ass, but you could at least tell him before you blocked him or something. He's been hyping you up to the Mox, vouching for you and shit. But then you just vanish on him? She hissed a bit, eyes narrowed. What? I blinked a bit at her words, trying to make heads or tails of the sudden hostility, before it came to me. I was being stupid. That's right. It must have looked like I dropped off the edge of the world. I spoke the realization before chuckling a little. Listen, it's not like that. Nox is, well, I'm not sure I would call him a friend, but he was nice enough. But with everything going on, I've been out of touch. Yeah, whatever. Not like I really care. I just agreed to stop you if I ever saw you. Right, I muttered as I opened my phone system. I hadn't really checked my stuff, but as I pulled up the system and actually looked at it, I noticed I had plenty of messages. Missed calls, texts, even voicemail alerts. I winced a bit. My system had updated when I first ran out of the jammer to call Hiromi, but I had been hyper-focused on my gonk friend, that I had thought would be rushing around Night City looking for me. Then I had been too distracted with the desire to kill the maelstrom fuckers. I hadn't bothered to actually notice all the other messages. I had a few from Ichi, mostly just a few alerts on how his work had been going the first few nights of the war, but that trailed off not long after. I guess my lack of response had meant he stopped messaging me. But I had a ton from Nox. He was a texter. I had a barrage of texts that trailed off when he must have realized I wasn't responding. Most interestingly though was that the text said he had a gig for me. I considered it. Would a gig from a kid that pushes BDs really be worth my time? Then I remembered two very important things. First, I was still mostly unknown. Wakako might have some respect for my skills, and maybe the Tiger Claws might realize I was pretty useful, but that was about it. Second, side quests are fun. It's not always about the reward or the money. So I opened up a text message. *K, sorry for being out of touch so long. I was under a jammer and recovering. What's this about a gig? I nodded once that was done, realizing I had been standing there right in front of all the mocks. I waved at them trying to ignore that they were all looking at me, as I started heading back towards the car remembering to finish off my noodle cup as I went. I hadn't even made it back to my quadro when I got a response. Ringing. Nox was calling me. I shrugged, it would be easier through a phone call anyways. Hey Nox. Motoko. I'm glad you messaged me. How are you? Everything preem? I've been trying to reach out, you said you were recovering? You alright? Yeah, I noticed, sorry about not responding, I've been hanging out under a jammer. I cut in, as Nox was also apparently a bit of a blabbermouth. Just some maelstrom issues. I just noticed your messages. You mentioned a gig? Yes. I had this brainwave, a preem idea. The preemist. So listen, can you come by Lizzie's? It's way easier if I show you rather than try to explain it. I guess? Is that Nova? Not too pushy? Sure. I'm free, I can stop by. I agreed. Side quest, get. Chapter 37. Despite being midday, Lizzie's was already busy. That's just Night City for you. As I pulled into a parking spot, I could see Rita the bouncer throwing some drunk out of the club. The poor guy, not able to fight back against the Borg woman who happily tossed him on his ass onto the asphalt. I walked up, stepping over the groaning drunk as I headed up to the door, only to be stopped by Rita as she sauntered into my path. Nox finally found ya, huh? She seemed to question, her eyes locked on mine. Yeah, I had someone let me know he was trying to get in touch. I told her as I stopped, as the way she was looking told me she wasn't happy. We aren't the type to be pissed with avoiding someone you aren't interested in, but it's fucked not to at least let him down easy. She said with a little glare, telling me in no uncertain terms that my disappearance wasn't taken well. Geez, what is it with these mocks? There was nothing like that. I was out of touch because of some maelstrom trouble. I was under a jammer. I didn't even know he was trying to contact me. She snorted a bit but stepped aside, letting me in. Thankfully, it seemed she wasn't taking the matter into her own hands. I decided to ignore every Mox's weird assumptions and just get back to business. Side quest. I walked through the entrance without stopping at the desk. I wasn't here to buy BDs after all. Honestly, BD stuff kinda creeped me out. The fact that you could feel other people's emotions during a BD, rather than your own? It was like art that forces a perspective on you. Which was sorta weird. Imagine watching a TV show, but instead of enjoying it from your own perspective, you felt the emotions of the main character, watched from their eyes. It was just weird. One of the reasons I hadn't done any brain dance stuff since I woke up in Night City, normal TV and games, was good enough for me. No need to stick other people's emotions in my head. The main room was actually surprisingly full. Again, the fact it was midday seemed to have no effect on Night City debauchery. But I didn't see Nox. So I did what any gun-toting merc does when you enter a bar. I walked up to the bartender and settled into a chair, waiting for him to finish an order before walking over. What can I get you? Just information. I'm looking for Knox, he asked me to meet him. Ah. That's right, you're that one girl. The bartender gave a chuckle as his eyes went yellow. I let him know, he'll be here in a minute. I shrugged, I could have sent a text too. So Mox tends to be defensive about the kids. Might be a good idea to let the kid down flat if you aren't interested, instead of ghosting him. The man offered as he wiped a glass clean. Wait. I couldn't help but ask as I brought up my hand to the guy to stop him from saying anything further. Did Knox tell everyone that I ghosted him or something? You're the third Mox I've met today that mentioned that. Well, less he told us, and more he has been mopin', dash. Thanks, Mateo. Knox yelled as the boy practically jumped the bar to try and shut the bartender up. Hey Motoko. Glad you made it. Come on, I have something prime to show you. He said, glaring at the bartender who was smiling behind the teenager's hand as waved his hands in a go-on-then motion. Sure. I offered, shrugging, which grabbed Knox's attention. Whoa. That's fresh chrome. Double full arm replacement? He asked, looking curiously at my arms. Yeah, the reason no messages went through. I got kidnapped by Maelstrom. Ended up needing some Ripper work done after. Been under a jammer for the bit. Sorry about that. I explained. Hopefully the explanation would stop making every Mox I ran into tell me off for ignoring Knox. Seriously, Susie didn't seem to be too happy with Knox, but considering everyone's reaction, he must be pretty loved by the Mox. Damn. He muttered, looking shocked as he took in my arms. But I wasn't about to get into it right now, especially with someone I wasn't super close to. So the gig? Alright. Yeah, come on, it's this way. He offered, slowly seeming to come to some conclusion as he finally slipped off the bar and waved me to follow. We went through the back, down some halls until we came to a place I actually remembered. Down a set of dark steps into a server room. The room that carried all the Mox's BDs probably, considering they literally ran a BD club. It made sense they would need a ton of storage and processing. But this was the realm of a certain character. Jude's. Knox yelled out as he hurried forward, rushing into the next room as I hesitated. I don't know if I was ready to meet Judy. I'd seen her naked. Well, I mean, it was a video game, but still, she was real here. How do you respond to someone that you've basically seen in a porn? I resisted slapping myself, but only just, as I shook my head. Focus, Motoko. I demanded as I let cool slip over. Then I walked into the room where Knox was standing next to Judy Alvarez. She was younger. It struck me then that Judy was pretty young in 2077. Right now, she practically looked like a teenager, or only just out of it. Motoko. This is Judy. She is absolutely Nova at anything tech, but she is the best BD maestro in Night City. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Jude, this is Motoko. She backed me up before, didn't even try to cred me. She is running as an edge runner, and would be perfect for that idea I talked to you about. Yeah, I remember Knox. Didn't she ghost you? Judy asked as she pulled up a BD wreath set and set it on the desk she was sitting at. And no. It wasn't like that. She got into some trouble, that's all. Her arms weren't chrome before. He offered the end quietly, practically whispering it, but I picked it up without much trouble. Judy's eyes shifted to me, to my arms, back to him, and I could just make out through a side profile that Knox was looking worried? Right, moving on from that. Judy grabbed her wreath and sort of pointed it at me. You know anything about virtue? I blinked at the random question. I opened my mouth to answer, then closed it. The word was familiar, and it was on the tip of my tongue. But Judy didn't wait. Virtues are raw BDs unedited. The base recording. Then a BD editor like me goes through, fixes it up, gets rid of the dangerous highs, or the uncomfortable lows. Makes it usable for people. And Judy is the best. Knox offered with a grin as he sat back on the desk. But there are a lot of markets for BDs. Not just porn. He offered, chuckling a little with a blush across his cheeks. Right. I get that. So what's the gig? Knox's idea. Wants to move into Edgerunner BDs. They are extremely popular, although usually, they are snuff films. Judy offered, looking at me. Oh. You want me to record BDs? Exactly. Knox offered, rushing up to me, practically bouncing on his feet. You were Nova when you fought Ian and his assholes. It gave me the idea, see? What if we start putting out preem BDs of Edgerunners on gigs? With the best BD editor in Night City cleaning them up, we can offer the experience to people that they can't get outside of XBDs. Not that we expect you to do something crazy right away. Judy interrupted, waving her hands a bit as she tried to calm Knox down. We don't want you doing something crazy and flatlining, but whatever is normal is fine. The goal is to sort of. Judy trailed off as she rolled her wrist as she searched for the right word. My goal is to build up a catalog and brand. Right now, there aren't really any BDs of Edgerunners working that isn't an XBD. The only BDs that come close are like Jimmy Kurosaki's Edgerunner, but those are all cyberpsycho shit. Knox said, shaking his head as Judy nodded along. I guess the Mox had an issue with that sort of BD? I mean, sure, sending out an Edgerunner to do gigs while we record is asking for some deaths. But I want to make a BD that a normal person can enjoy, a taste of what it's like to be an Edgerunner. Knox said, speaking quickly and almost rambling. I could hear the excitement in his voice as he talked. So you want me? Of course. You're preem. You fight really well, you're a good person, and Knox trailed off, blushing a little as he tried to figure out what to say. You are good looking. Judy interrupted with a smirk, causing Knox to jump and glare at her. You'd be surprised how many people enjoy a BD from the perspective of someone good looking. That, and the pay probably won't be great at first? Knox added, looking apologetic. It's gonna cost to get everything started. Shards to store it on, Judy's services, which aren't free. Hey, I know I'm good, and I already work all day doing this. I know. Knox offered, hands up. Anyway, yeah. So the pay is gonna be shit? He said questioningly, looking towards me. I see. The real reason behind choosing me. I'm a young Edgerunner, someone you know, and probably the only person that heard your deal and then heard the pay and didn't walk out. I said, smirking myself as Judy chuckled as she seemed to watch what was happening with no intention of getting involved. Knox, on the other hand, was going red in the face from embarrassment. Sure. Sounds fun. I interrupted as I looked around the place. So this is your setup? Preem, Judy, very preem. I don't even recognize all of this stuff. Most of it is tweaked under the box, only the cases are standard. She offered with a grin as I seemed to ignore Knox's confusion as he looked around like the world wasn't on its right axle. You will? Sure. It's not like I don't already go out and take gigs. Making extra money on the side for some of them? Sounds like a good idea. Just as long as the eddies do end up in my pocket once everything has started. Deal. I promise you won't regret this. Cool. So what do I need to record a BD? I don't have the cyberware for that. Right. About that? Knox asked, once more wincing. Kids broke, and a good BD recorder is about 500 eddies. Judy interrupted with a flat response. I gave Knox a scowl that he looked like he desperately wanted to do something to fix, before I sighed. I'll go talk to my Ripper. You do that. Come around once you are chipped. Judy says, waving from above her chair as the woman had put back on her BD wreath and was getting back to work. Thank you. Knox said as he sort of followed me as I decided to leave Judy to her work. Don't worry about it. Besides, it's smart. I turned on him, suddenly poking my finger right into his face, which had him freak as he backpedaled in retreat. I respect the entrepreneurial spirit. Honestly, it's a Nova idea, something I can do, and it's extra eddies for something I'm already doing. But Knox, I like blunt honesty more than hype. Next time, if you have an idea and there is a problem, just talk to me. Then, as he stood that mouth opening and closing, trying to find the words, I held out my hand. Partner? His mouth clicked shut and his spine straightened out. Partners. We shook hands, and I gave him a firm nod. Now I'm off to my Ripper. Oh. Mind if I come? Sure. I agreed. It would be nice to get to know Knox more anyways. Your taste in music is kinda bad. Knox told me as I puffed up my cheeks a bit. He reddened a bit too as his words finally seemed to reach his brain. Realizing he was being rude, just because I thought the samurai songs were still cool. It wasn't my fault. He grew up in a world where they were old before he even was born. For me they were catchy new songs, and while Silverhand was a jackass, he was a talented jackass. I just like what I like. Right. He muttered, trying to awkwardly end the conversation. He was kind of fidgeting, which I could see out of the corner of my eye thanks to my wide vision. I let it go. I didn't really feel like arguing my music preferences. Instead, I found a parking spot in front of Misty's Esoterica. Come on, this is it. I told him as I slipped out of my car, watching as he looked around confused. I thought you said you were going to see a Ripper? I am. I replied smiling as I stepped into Misty's shop and called out. Misty? Oh, is that Motoko? Misty's voice called out from the back as her fluffy hair poked around the corner with the rest of her following as she stepped out. I noticed the Buddhist statue she was carrying. I noticed she was struggling, and instantly I was rushing up to her, easily grabbing the statue and lifting it out of her arms. Misty really needed to work out more. Even before I got my arms, I could have lifted the statue. Oh. Thank you, Motoko. You're pretty strong, huh? She asked, looking surprised as I lifted it up, and I just shrugged. Cyberarms and healthy exercise. I gave her a response with a big smile. Where does this go? Oh, here, thank you. Oh, and you have a friend? Welcome to Misty's Esoterica. She called out to Knox, who was looking around with the same look Hiromi had on when I first brought her here. I was giggling as I placed the statue down in the place Misty wanted it. Is Vic in? He is. Watching the game from what I heard when I walked past the stairs. Are you okay? Misty asked suddenly as she seemed to appear in my personal space and place a hand on my shoulder. You don't seem to be in any pain anymore, but... I'm great, Misty. Vic took perfect care of me, and I healed all up. I assured her with a smile, pulling up my leotard around my shoulder so she could see the connection of chrome and flesh. I let her poke her nose in for a moment before she nodded. I don't see any injury. You healed quick. Yeah, well. If I'm honest, I was having a rough time of it at first, but I stopped trying to think of my arms as the same as my flesh ones. I realized I was different now, but my ghost can't be hurt with a little metal. I told her, even if it still wasn't 100%. I still had flashes of discomfort, not pain, but shoving heavy metal arms into my shoulders left me with plenty of little issues. But adaptation had helped so much. I felt incredible. More normal. Misty looked into my face for a moment before she nodded. I'm glad. If you need some spiritual guidance, I would be honored if you let me help in any way I can. I'm not Vic. I can't fix your body, but there are plenty of options to help fix your spirit. Or your ghost? I'm not familiar with that belief. Misty said, but it was definitely a question. Shit, did I say ghost? Oh fuck, what do I do? I can't be honest, then I would have to admit I'm a fucking nerd. Like a super nerd. Well, I stuttered along before Misty seemed to get my discomfort and just sort of chuckled at me. No, with me. I broke into a laugh along with her. I'll tell you about it sometime. It's kinda embarrassing. I look forward to it. Hearing about different beliefs is why I opened my shop. She said, waving her arms a bit, showing off the decor. So she isn't your Ripper? No, Misty is just awesome. I told Knox as Misty laughed at my response before throwing me a wink. I sometimes work as Vic's nurse, but I'm not a Ripper. Come on, I'll walk you down. Misty offered, threading her arm with mine. I happily joined her, laughing as we walked out the back and down the steps. Vic? You have customers. Misty called down, which again made me think she was more than just a sometimes nurse. More like a nurse, assistant, and secretary all in one. Well, plus his landlord, as if I remembered right, she was the owner of the little basement storage that Vic used. Knox was frowning in the same way Hiromi did as he followed us down. Vic, we need to talk about your aesthetics. I couldn't help but joke in my head as the gate was unlocked and Vic saw me. Motoko. Glad to see you up and about. How are the arms? Any weakness, flashing pains? Come sit, I'll take a look. He offered, instantly swiveling his chair to his Ripper seat as he waved me forward. Could I admit that I absolutely loved these two? Vic was total dad energy, and Misty was total big sister energy. That's it. I'm adopting them both. I barked out a laugh to my own thoughts, confusing everyone, but I didn't care. I happily walked over and plopped in the chair. Vic, Knox, no Knox, I refuse to introduce you using your tagline. I offered at the boy's pout, but to my distress, he interrupted. Knox the Mox. He threw a wink at Misty, which he was cruising for a bruising, flirting with Jackie's girl. Well, soon-to-be girl, I am pretty sure they weren't dating yet, at least I hadn't seen him. That just meant I would have to protect her for him then. Jackie Misty OTP. That's odd. Vic muttered beside me, and I realized he was checking my shoulder. Fuck, of course he would notice how fast I healed. Hey Misty, can you do me a favor? Take Knox upstairs for a few minutes? I asked with an apologetic smile, and the boy, despite being a teenager, seemed to realize that I was asking her to get him out of here for a bit. Misty nodded once sharply. Course. Come on Knox, have you ever had your fortune read? No. But it could be fun? That's the spirit. Misty offered with a grin as they headed up. Vic, though, hadn't been looking at the byplay. No, he was already grabbing multiple other tools and taking a look at my shoulder very closely. Finally, he pulled his face from the little pad he had his nose buried in, as his other hand pushed a weird probe against my shoulder, scanning it. Motoko. How are you completely healed? There isn't even any scar tissue left. He asked, his hand on the probe still. I opened my mouth to answer, then closed it. I had kinda thought I would eventually be asked about all my weirdness, I just hadn't even thought about it this time. But of course Vic would notice. I could have come back in 6 months, and he likely still would have noticed something was weird. Fast heal, or other drugs don't heal like this, completely. I would swear if asked that you were born with this chrome. Which is impossible. I opened my mouth again, to say something, to come up with some answer that would make sense. I just didn't have one. Instant healing. No instant perfect healing? There wasn't anything quite like it. I know it's weird, but I can't really explain it. I decided instead. I just didn't want to lie to him. Vic was a good person, had done me a serious favor when he fixed up my arms. He sat back a bit, looking me over as he ran his hand over his cheeks and chin. I noticed it was not the hand covered in Ripper gear. You in any danger, kid? No. I'm safe, Vic. No one knows I can heal fast. I even kept it from June. When I woke up from a coma? A year-long coma, I was able to walk again in like a week. I told him, and I watched his eyebrows come together in shock. Impossible. I heal fast. I can basically fully recover from just about anything with a full night's rest. 8 hours of sleep, and pop, I'm good to go. Fuck. He whispered, causing me to giggle as he realized what he had said. Shit. No, wait. Sorry. Sorry, kid. Okay, you can't tell me how? I know how. But I really can't talk about it. I trust you, Vic, don't think I don't. I mean, you're basically my full-time doctor now. But I just can't really explain it. Healing at this level? Hell, kid, that would put me out of a job, in a good way. You can't tell me anything? It's not transferable, and there isn't any way to copy it as far as I know. I offered, actually sad at the idea. I hadn't really considered how useful gamer healing could be, but Vic had instantly gone to other people about how this could help them. I really wasn't a hero, I guess. Alright. He took a deep breath and shook it off. If you want me to be your Ripper, I'm gonna need to know what this is. Maybe an overnight after an injury so I can get some scans, or figure out what is happening. It makes me nervous to do anything if I don't know how the healing process will be. Okay. I told him, which must have surprised him at my easy agreement. I trust you. I answered by giving him a thumbs up. So yeah. That's my big secret. I heal fast, that's one of the reasons why I'm not afraid to work as a merc. Well kid, for a secret, it's a hell of a big one. Alright. Alright. Enough of this, your shoulder looks great. And you obviously came here for something? BD recorder. I said, laughing at Vic's surprised look before he flushed. Literally, the guy went fully red. Kid. I get you might be getting a good deal with the mocks, but maybe. Is that kind of work really what you'd dash? Vic. My friend, doctor, and someone I respect. Before you embarrass yourself anymore. The idea is to record while I'm on gigs, for a sort of softcore XBD release. Killing and doing merc work, not normal mock stuff. Oh thank Christ. He exhaled, practically whooping as the air rushed out of him, but that was completely muffled by my absolute giggle fit. Oh also. Can you check my arms? I got a bit dinged up by some maelstrom the other night, and my right arm has this hitch when I try to dash. Yeah kid, shush, I'll take care of it. Giving me a heart attack, he grumbled, but he was hiding a smirk. I matched him. It was nice. To be able to just reveal the truth. Thanks Vic. I whispered, feeling my eyes water a little as he took care of me. Total Dad Energy. Chapter 38. It was a very fast procedure for Vic to install a BD recorder. I already had my Karoshi, so I really only needed the small nodule that was added to my neural link. You couldn't even notice as it was just a few moments work to pop open the back of my neck where my cable ports were, install the squarish box that was software and storage for the recordings, and then close me back up. I think the arm was even faster. He popped me open, and just did some magic with a few tools, and the dent was fine. I didn't even need anesthesia. It was more hardware installation than surgery. Alright left and right? No twinge? No points where your neck feels like it grinds on anything? Good. All set then. Vic says as he takes his hands off the side of my neck where he was guiding my head. I checked out the BD recorder myself, so I trust there isn't anything hidden on it, which is a serious concern. I've seen far too many people come in, after being blackmailed when someone gave them a recorder with a backdoor. Just make sure you keep it turned off when you don't want it on. Got it. Thanks Vic. For everything. Don't look at me like that, with those puppy dog eyes. You're a good kid. Stay alive. I will. I can't die until I get older than you. I tease as I hop off the chair, earning a deep chuckle from the man. Well, at least I know it will be years down the line then. Go on, I bet Misty is torturing your mock's friend. Yeah, she is pretty preem like that. I said as I walked up the stairs, my waving hand the last thing Vic could see as I walked up and into Misty's. So what does that mean? I heard as I turned the corner. Knox was sitting over an array of tarot cards Misty had laid out. I told you, what it means changes depending on you. But the tarot can help guide your way, open a path. I hope it helps. I still have no idea what it means. It means you should listen to Misty. I offered, surprising both of them. I guess I had been too quiet. Oh Motoko, everything okay? Yep. Vic and I just needed a talk. I'm all set and chipped with a BD recorder. I tell the two, earning a jerk from Misty. BD recorder. I had to bite back a giggle as Misty reacted just like Vic. Don't worry, nothing weird. I'm working with Knox and the mocks, doing BDs of my merc work. Like softcore XBDs. I explain, earning a wrinkled nose at my words, but eventually she nodded. You'll be safe? Course. All it means is that I'll have a chance to make more eddies for each gig I do. I said as I jerked my head at Knox. You ready to go? Judy needed to set up some stuff first, right? Yeah. Awesome. Jude's gonna be shocked you got chipped so fast. Thanks for, paying for it. Don't worry about it, everything after this is the easy part for me. I'm just gonna do my normal jobs, you're the one who has to sell them. I say, laughing even though he was looking at me like I was crazy. Why did everyone always look at me like that? Back already? Judy's voice called out as we walked down into her little lab. Yep. Jude, Motoko got chipped. You ready? Sure. The girl said, digging a shard out of her desk and pushing it into her computer before running a program. My eyes caught the shifting text as she typed, and I realized she was setting up a program for a BD recorder. I walked up as she worked, and while I wasn't perfect, I was able to follow along with the program. It made me relax a bit, realizing it was mostly about how much data on what to store. You don't like the BD recorder standard settings? Nope, they are slop. We've been making so many BDs, we've designed our own adjustments. You don't mind? She asked, not looking away from the computer as she worked. I'm not seeing anything that can activate the recorder when I don't want it on. Mostly just sensitivity settings for emotions, and increased bandwidth for my vision? About right. Standard BD virtues aren't meant for high-quality optics like those Kuroshi. They can let me increase the quality a good bit, will let me pick out more interesting things on the virtue as I edit it. Cool. I whispered, earning a snort from the older girl. You sound like my grandmother. She said suddenly, actually looking at me with a half smile. Nobody says cool anymore. I do. It's kinda lame. I'm bringing it back. I argued instantly, how could anyone think cool wasn't cool slang? It was cool. Judy actually broke into a husky laugh, then both arms holding her stomach as she chortled, almost crying as I pouted at her. Oh Chum, that's funny. She finally managed to stop laughing long enough to say as she went back to typing, just with little giggles breaking in now and then. I pouted harder as I turned to Knox, who was pointedly not looking at me. Oh, it's on. I'm now making it a duty to say cool at least once on every one of these stupid BD recordings, just to prove it wasn't lame. Take that. Here. Judy finally said, throwing the shard at me, and I slotted it. I did run a double check that there was nothing malicious. I was fairly certain Judy wouldn't pull a fast one, but it was just good ideas to check random software. It looked fine to everything I could see, and I let it update my BD recorder settings. Preem. So next time I take a gig, I'll turn on the recording and bring you the virtue? You got it. Raw BDs are virtues. Judy confirmed, before she suddenly shooed me away. Now both of you get out of here, I still have a lot of work to do. Knox, take your output upstairs, have some fun or something. Motoko isn't my output. Judy. Ha 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 ha. She cackled, ignoring Knox's frantic denials. She was teasing him. That's cute. I'm here? Knox offered me as he settled a drink onto the table in front of me. He had led me up and offered a seat, then ran off to grab a drink. Thankfully, I had made sure to mention I don't drink alcohol. So I had a can of some lemony soda. Thanks. I agreed as I popped the tab. It's pretty impressive, coming up with the idea of Edgerunner BDs. Oh well. I've always wanted to sell my own BDs, you know? I came up with the idea after selling an ex-BD to a guy. He ended up showing up the next day. He had puked his guts out, asked if there was anything actiony like that with just less. Cyberpsycho? Exactly. Edgerunners are super popular, you know? Everyone can talk about Blackhand or Rogue. But not many can actually experience that. So I thought about trying to find an Edgerunner to talk about my idea with. I was trying to find someone just, as a side thing when I ran into you. And you decided to ask me after seeing me have a fist fight with a couple kids? One I didn't win? Please, Ian's actually pretty nasty hand to hand, there is a reason I was on the ground, but I mean. You're my age, already a merc. You walk the walk, talk the talk. It made me realize I don't need to start at the top. Plus you're my age, do you have any idea how many kids our age want to be an edgerunner? To experience life as a merc even secondhand? From someone their own age? That'll be a rush. I can see it. I agreed, taking a sip from my drink. So I guess it's in my corner now. I'll need to find a gig, or just go out and find some trouble to record. My words made Knox wince a bit. Sorry. To put everything in your lap. It's fine. Like I said, this is a good idea. It could be fun. I've never been a movie star before. BD star? No, that kinda has certain connotations. I muttered, causing Knox to snort into his drink. BD stars are a thing too. Of the non-porn style. He offered, and I chuckled, nodding. There was a big BD studio here in the city too. That's where they did that fucking crucifixion questline. Right. Night City was fucked up. Alright. I suppose I should get to work then. I'll reach out to Wakako and see if she has anything. Or I could go hunt some maelstrom. Knox winced at that and quickly put his drink down. Maybe something less dangerous? Maelstrom are pretty easy. Most of the time their guys are watching TV, or mid-BD. It's super easy to kill someone when they are in the middle of a BD. I say, making the motion of slicing their throat that at this point was practically rote to me. Alright. That easy? Oh sure. They are so distracted they never notice. Scavs are that way too. Always a couple in the middle of some BD relaxing while the others work. The first time I went into a scav nest, I killed 2 of them that way. I offer, making sure not to mention it wasn't just my first scav nest, but my only one. Didn't want him to think I was some noob or something. Seriously, only one scav den? That was pretty noobish, I think. Rookie numbers, Motoko. Knox just sort of nodded along with me as I explained how easy it was murder someone in the middle of a BD. Leaving Knox at Lizzie's after we hung out for a while, I decided I might as well see what was going on with Wakako. I hadn't heard from her since the whole kidnapping thing. Which surprised me. I expected her to reach out at some point for a job. So I drove home. Driving down the street next to the apartment, I looked around as I slowly rolled down the road. It was quiet. The old man that usually ran the food cart next to the entrance of the apartment was gone. The streets were quiet. It made me sad. I actually kind of liked the density of Night City, to be able to just walk amongst a horde of people. I kept going. I wasn't going to stop at the apartment. I was here to see Wakako. I drove down and parked on the street outside Jig Jig Street. As I walked through the darkened area, I couldn't help but chuff out a laugh. A gang war going on. The normally full streets practically empty and nearly barren. Jig Jig Street? As busy as ever. Shaking my head, I walked past the dolls that were still offering services, past the Johns that were flirting and paying for services. Past the people that wandered to different stalls buying and selling. I noticed plenty of guards hanging around. My karoshi punching through the dark corners between the shops, seeing men in suits, or just gangsters hanging around keeping an eye out. I guess Wakako was well protected. I entered her pachinko parlor, again wondering about her choice of venue. Get in here, girl. Stop wasting my time. Wakako called out as I walked in, as usual, not waiting for me to check if she was free. The woman as usual was sitting back in her chair, cigarette smoke haloing her as her TV ran some ancient broadcast of a show that was probably coming out when I would have been alive in my last life. Long time no see, Wakako. How are you? I said, not sure what else to say. She of course wasn't enthused about my greeting. Sit down, girl. I'm not pleased with you. Joining the kamikaze? Foolish, a waste of your ability. I pay more. I opened my mouth, closed it. Frowned, then rose a finger. I didn't though? An elegant eyebrow rose up, and a moment later, her eyes turned gold. A text was sent with a picture. Oh, it was a picture of me standing with June after the assault we did on the Maelstrom Armory. I hold off on sending you any jobs after your unfortunate assault. Giving you time to recover and then you join up with those fools? I didn't join them, not really. The one next to me is June, my brother. He was being all overprotective after the kidnapping, so I went on that raid to prove I could handle myself. It didn't really work, but I ran out after and hit another Maelstrom group on my own, and June. You don't care. No. Right, I'm not a part of Kamikaze. Terrible name by the way. She hummed a little as her sharp eyes kept locked on mine, but I wasn't about to flinch, I was telling her the truth. Besides, she was dangerous in a way, but I think she was actually pretty nice when you get past all the necessary harshness of living in Night City. Fine. Her eyes went gold again and I blinked as she sent me like 3 different messages. I've been forced to hold on to these gigs for longer than I would have liked. Complete them. I blinked, looking at the 3 different gigs she had sent me, reading through them quickly. All of them were pretty much the same. Go to a place, steal something, bring it to Wakako. Easy really, but there was a complication. If that's all. She dismissed me, but I didn't get up. Question. Her narrowed eyes prompted me to quickly get on with it. I picked up a side gig. I'm recording my gigs for BD release through the mocks. I just want to make sure none of them are sensitive, and a BD of me doing this won't cause trouble for the client. Or you. My question actually surprised her. Her face didn't shift, her body didn't move, she gave nothing away. But the fact she didn't have an instant answer like always told me a lot. Finally she nodded. Foolish, but I don't argue with fools. A week. Don't release the recordings for a week. For these 3 gigs. You will ask before recording any gig I give you in the future. Will do. I offered, flashing a smile, and ignoring her remarks about me being a fool. It wasn't about being smart or stupid. It was about doing something cool. I stood then wandering back out into Jig Street. I guess I had some jobs to do. The first job was childishly easy. Mega Building H1 looked just like all the mega buildings, just more run down since it was the oldest. I headed up to floor 15, found the correct apartment number, and unlocked the door with practically a glance. The standard security system on the door was as useless as a door with a key sticking out of it. I walked in, boots utterly silent, as I walked past the guy in the middle of enjoying a BD on his couch, walked over to his computer, grabbed the shard that was sticking out of the side of it, confirmed it was the right one with the verification program Wakako had given me, and walked back out. Gig complete. Poor security made it child's play. I did record the whole thing, but I doubt anyone would get any enjoyment out of it. It only lasted like 30 seconds. Then I moved on. Next job was in 6th Street territory. A guy was hiding out there, in a gang house, paying 6th Street to keep him safe. I wasn't there to kill him though. Wakako's gig workup explained some bare bones. Guy had blackmail on his boss wanted the blackmail taken care of. So my job was to find the information, ensure it was recovered. Normally it would be deleted, but Wakako wanted the data. Not my business. I pulled over a block away. The gang house was in a suburban area of rundown homes. I walked down the next street over. It wasn't hard to check a map and find the number of the house directly behind the gang house. Once I found it, I simply walked right through the small gated backyard. It wasn't like people had dogs anymore. I stilled at that, realizing that was true. I really wanted to pet a puppy. I shook it off. Work now, sad realization later. I climbed the fence only after looking over it and making sure no one was hanging out in the back or had a camera set up. Nothing. I climbed over the fence in seconds, drawing on my inner Jackie Chan, smiling as I managed to climb the fence just like he would, as I went completely cold and hurried to the house. Mission recommended: complete stealth. Apparently, the boss wanted the guy trying to blackmail him to be alive to realize his plan fell through. Honestly, I didn't know who was the good guy here. Was the boss cruel? Evil? Was his worker trying to steal money that didn't belong to him? I had no idea. Nor did I really care. I wasn't a hero. I slipped in through the back door, noticing the living room to my right was occupied, a TV going and a few people talking to each other, making fun of the show. I walked past the open door without them noticing, heading for the upstairs. I was halfway up the stairs when I felt it. That shiver up my spine. Danger sense. I leapt off the stairs landing without even a scrape on the tiled floor as I slipped into a closet at the foot of the stairs. The steps coming down the stairs I tracked with my ears as a new voice joined the two in the living room. I slipped out. Continued on my path up the stairs. 2 doors, I checked one, looking under the door jamb, nothing I could see or hear. I stood and just barely opened the door. Empty room. I slipped inside, looking to see if my target was inside. The bedroom was a wreck. I instantly realized it wasn't the right one. This room was well lived in. My target had only just started staying with them. I checked the hall and slipped out, moving to the next room. I slipped inside once I checked it. Empty. But this one had the marks of someone having moved stuff around just recently. The computer on the desk was new. No dust. No lucky shards sticking in this time, but that was fine. I pulled out the cord from my neck and plugged it in. Ice. I blinked as the system resisted, desperate to keep me out. It actually gave me some difficulty. The ICE on this laptop was a bit more powerful than the defenses of a vending machine. Hell, it was tougher than the security system the Netrunner Maelstrom had. I frowned as I found myself actually needing to fight against it. I could keep it from sending any sort of alert, as it was just a mindless system not backed up by a Netrunner defending it, but it was still tough. Where the hell had this guy even found this level of ICE? I frowned, realizing I might actually take some time to get through this. It seems the reason this guy managed to steal this info from his boss was probably because of his net running skill. I could steal the computer, but without breaching in, I had no way to know if there was a backup. So I looked away for a moment and prepared myself in case I needed to delta. Window open, path free, and the computer unhooked from a power supply, and ready to be snatched and grabbed. Then I refocused on the digital defenses and got to work. Security code blasted through my vision as I breached and breached, each wall of ICE seemingly more dense than the last. Over and over, I broke through. I could see the alerts for both breach and intelligence flowing through, as I fought against the defense. Damn, if I had known how much experience I could get from something like this, I would have bought a ICE program myself, just to break it. Still, I kept focused even as minutes passed, as the noise from downstairs continued. I just had to hope they were occupied. Finally something changed. Breach protocol skill level up. I felt the inrush of instincts and knowledge, and my work went even faster. Tricks the ICE threw up that stymied me, now only slowed me for a moment, as my mind worked through problem after problem. Intelligence leveled up. The alert came in, Intelligence 5, and if I was doing anything else I wouldn't have noticed change. But this time I did. Considering I was literally solving difficult equations, puzzles, and general issues, the ICE was programmed to throw up. But with intelligence? Came clarity. Came simplicity. The speed of me facing a new problem, and then putting forth the correct solution, increased. Less wondering, less confusion, less brute force. I blinked. The computer was displaying its desktop. I was in. Seconds later, I had confirmation. The file I was looking for was there, and it hadn't been copied, at least according to the metadata. Target acquired. I closed the laptop down, and used my already prepared getaway. I was out the window, landing in the backyard, and across the short fenced-off area in moments. Then I was on the other street, and more than capable of just walking casually to my car. Chapter 39. The third job involved stealing something. Wakako, is this going to be a theme? Problem was I had to steal something from someone rich. I parked down the street from my target at a little shopping area. Grabbed some dinner and looked at the skyscraper that my target lived in. This corpo was rich, had security, and owned a weird statue that my client wanted. I read through the mission brief again, shaking my head that I was literally stealing some fancy art piece for another rich guy to crow about. Problem? This was a secure building. Like Hiromi's home, but even more fancy. There would be serious security, including actual people to keep everyone out. So I needed to figure out a way through all of that, into the guy's apartment, find the object, steal it, and escape without any issues. I could do that. Probably? I walked past the entrance of the building, scanning everything inside and checking what the bottom floor security was like. It was tough. A receptionist. 2 LMG turrets hidden in the roof. And a camera over the receptionist's head. The building was pretty big though, it had tons of little shops on the bottom floor. Rather than rush in, I decided to actually look around, a walk around the block to scope out the area. There was a little alleyway cut into the side of the building with loading docks and garbage dumpsters, but it had a security camera watching over it. Of course. This is gonna be annoying. I muttered as I completed my circuit. I had a few options, but none of them were very appetizing. So I started poking. I walked to the alleyway and did something I hadn't used yet. I breached into the camera from afar using the breach quick hack instead of the direct function, then once its systems were under my control, I turned it off. With that done, I hid between a few dumpsters to see what would happen. If the security system was in any way well designed, someone would come out to check on the downed camera. Right? I breached their system, and I wasn't elegant about it. Surely it would send an alert to their security room and someone would come take a look. Right? An hour later, I felt utterly irritated. What is this security? Their system gets hacked and they just ignore it. I got up and stomped towards the rear door. It had a keypad that I poked my cord into and started breaching. It popped open. Motherfucker. I hissed. This security was fake. It was Radio Shack level shit that someone had screwed in place to make the security seem tighter. It was like those old padlocks you could just smack with a hammer and have them pop open. The image of security more than the fact. I went cold as I stepped in. Fine, they have shit security, just makes my job easier. Even if I could still smell the trash I had been sitting next to for the last hour. The back room was a loading area, probably for the entire building, and not just the apartments. It was also thankfully empty. With a few doors leading out, I started checking them. Broom closet, kitchen, main hallway. I could see the main street I had first walked up to the building from. And the elevators. I smiled as I walked out of the back room, no one even looking my way and the only camera in the area in the front room not even looking at the elevators. I pushed the request and it denied me. Stupid thing needed a passkey. I thought about snooping around a bit. I bet I could find a few extra pass shards in the lobby or something, but I just pulled out my cord and plugged it in. The elevator opened up. When I finished this job, I was going to send a complaint about this building's security. This wasn't even fun. I pushed the 8 on the touchpad and waited as it took me up. The target had a private floor for his home, so once I was up there, security might be harder. Might actually give me a challenge. The elevator opened and I could already hear voices. The elevator opened into a small entrance lobby, with a single door leading into the apartment. I peeked out of the elevator, searched for cameras quickly before walking out of the elevator. Nothing. The door had a little code lock, just like the building's back door. I frowned, sticking my cord inside. I breached. The door clicked open. I was glad I was feeling cold right then, because that was so dumb. You live in Night City. Why don't you have security? I slipped inside. 2 voices. A male and a female. Head on a swivel, I kept searching for any security. There was actually an HMG turret recessed into the floor in the first room. But it was off, and manually controlled from what my scan was showing. So I didn't have to worry about it unless the owner noticed me. I walked past it, started scanning everything looking for the object that Wakako's client wanted. Nothing in the front lobby. I slipped a peek towards the kitchenette. No, a bar. The apartment owner had company. I think that was a doll. Or a joy toy. She reminded me of Evelyn Parker from the game. Similar style, very neo-kitsch. Definitely an escort. I looked away. That should keep them busy for a bit. I slipped past the open door to the long hallway and started checking rooms. First room was a small office. A laptop called me, but it wasn't what I was here for. Next room was an entertainment room, a big couch, a large TV, even a BD wreath on a table. Guy liked his fun. But not my target. Stupid little statue thing. I had to slowly maneuver myself upstairs, thankfully, just out of sight from the bar, and started checking the rooms up there. Interestingly, the first room I checked was a massive bathroom, like huge. A pool more than a bathtub. Instant jealousy. I wanted a massive hot tub bathtub. I pouted. I didn't even have time to look around it, no statue, so I slipped out to the next room. As I was about to open the door, I heard them. Come on Helena, let me show you something. I stilled waiting. Were they coming up or staying on the ground floor? The moment I heard a footstep on the stairs, I got my answer. I slipped into the room I was about to enter and slowly inched the door shut, then I turned around. Fuck. Bedroom. I glanced around, I needed a hiding spot. Bed? No, it was a massive thing that was attached to the floor. Doors? Two, one definitely attached to the bathroom. I checked the other one, slipping into the closet. It was a walk-in closet, practically a room on its own. Tons of clothes on hangers and shoes. It smelled like a store. I just inched the door shut when the bedroom door opened. Giggling and whispered nothings. Oh. You. I sighed silently as I heard the bed start creaking. This was going to be a while. It was not a while. 10 minutes later, both of them were breathless, although I could tell the Joy Toy was faking it, and they both got up and slipped into the bathroom. Thank fuck the guy didn't have a Mr. Stud. Once I was sure they were both in the bathroom and its stupid massive pool bathtub, I slipped out of the closet. The statue wasn't here. I slipped out into the hallway without a sound and looked around. Now that they were in one room, I could check around. It didn't take long. The statue was on a little cabinet in the room with the bar. I hadn't been able to see it from the entrance. I checked it for security. Nothing. I grabbed the damn thing and headed for the elevator, wanting to stomp the whole time. I was glad that was over. I pulled up to Jig Jig Street, having cooled off a bit. Seriously, how can they allow such poor security? I walked into Wakako's parlor, arms full of stuff, as I walked into her office. As usual, she was already waiting for me, her eyebrow raised as she saw my arms full. Here is everything. I told her, placing the statue in front of her, along with the laptop, and a shard in a row. Also, you would think better security systems would be important in Night City, but people really don't focus on it. I vented to Wakako. Netrunners are required to stop another netrunner. Usual policy is to hire guards if you want something protected. She offered, surprising me as she actually responded to my whining. I blinked at Wakako's response. Makes sense, I guess. Good work. She finally offered, examining all 3 items on her desk. Your death would have been a pointless waste. Don't allow yourself to be taken by surprise again. It's irritating to find someone capable of doing a job without bullets involved. Thanks? She nodded, eyes suddenly glowing gold as a huge amount of eddies was dropped into my account. Pay for the gigs, and the bonus for all 3. Get out of here, I'll let you know when I have another gig ready for you. She said, waving me off, but again I didn't run away instantly. Thanks, Wakako. I'll make sure to be safe. I tell her with a smile, earning a scoff as she waves me off. Wakako didn't want to admit it, but she had actually seemed worried about me. Old dragon lady she might be, but she wasn't terrible. Probably. I flopped onto the couch at the dojo apartments, tired. What have you been up to all day? Jun asked quietly as he turned down the volume of the TV he was watching. The news, oddly enough. Well, I went out to get some design software. I want to make some robot stuff. It's a long-term project. I picked that up, then I ran into the Mox, which... Did I tell you about Nox? Nox? Is that a gang? No, not the Dash. Nox is a Mox. Total nerd. I met him rescuing him from some jerks trying to steal the BDs he was trying to sell. I tell him as I lay on my back on the couch, my arms waving above me as I speak. Anyway, I hadn't talked to him since before the kidnapping, and I ran into a Mox girl that was annoyed that I had ghosted her friend. So I called him up, met up with him, and he offered me a gig. A kid selling BDs offering you a job? What does he want you to sell BDs to? Absolutely not. I opened my mouth. I closed my mouth. I knew exactly what it would sound like if I said what I was about to say. Twice already, I had gotten to surprise people with it. I should rephrase it. I should be clear when I speak. But where is the fun in that? 3rd time's the charm. He wanted me to make BDs for the Mox, and I agreed. I felt my lips twitching. Despite myself, not even Cold Blood 7 could stop me from almost laughing at the look on Jun's face. First it was a nod, like hearing me doing something other than merc work was good. Then his nodding head stilled as my words registered. No. He shouted, raising up and reaching out to grab at me. I let him, his hands wrapping around my shoulders. Absolutely not. I couldn't help it. The look on his face. I burst out into laughter, the noise absolutely ripping itself out of me. as June pinned me to the couch. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I laughed, practically crying as I felt June's hands loosen up, realizing I was messing with him. Don't joke about that stuff. Sorry. I gasped deep breaths, finally seeing June's angry face through my tears as I wiped them away. It's kinda true though. Just said in the worst way possible. I'm going to be recording BDs while I am doing mercenary gigs. Basically, when I work with Wakako, who is a slave driver by the way, she threw 3 gigs in my face today. I had to do all 3 of them back to back. I'm dash. What do you mean, recording BDs? Focus on the important part, Emuto. He demanded, shaking me a little, making me giggle. Alright, sorry, anyway, the idea is to sell BDs of me doing merc stuff, like XBDs, but cleaner. No cyber psycho stuff that everyone buys, but just clean gigs, giving people a taste of what it's like. I mean, I'm a teenager, so the hope is that kids will be interested in it. He stopped whatever he was about to say. Just be careful about that. If someone finds out you were the one to rob them, or kill their buddy, they might. Yeah. I've been thinking about that. I'm gonna talk to Judy. Judy is the Mox's BD maestro. About making sure any direct visuals of me are left out. Let people just feel what it's like. I wonder. Can you mess with a BD so any reflections would look like the user's face? June gave me a look before flicking my forehead. Do I look like I know anything about BD editing? But you should ask, if that's possible, it'll keep you a lot safer. He said and pulled me up from where I was laying on the couch to pull me into a hug. I snuggled in a little, liking the affection even if his arms still sucked. You really need to get some real skin. Go see Vic. I grumbled at him, poking him in his stupid plastic abs, which of course didn't do much. His arm clamping down on me until I could barely breathe in retaliation. Jerk. I gasped out. If only my Emuto was cute. Bitch, I'm adorable. I countered, barely audible, as I struggled to get away from his stupid gorilla arm. Stupid gorilla. Finally, he let me go, and I kicked him a few times before we settled back in to hang out and watch the news. Considering I was all caught up on Wakako's jobs, I had some time on my hands. I found myself tapping my fingers together, considering revenge. It feels good. Satisfying. To do harm to someone that harmed you. But it's not an easy thing to do. I still wanted that spider ripper to die. That maelstrom bastard needed to lose a few of his limbs. But how much effort was I going to give to them? How much of myself was I going to give over to the task of hunting them? If I had asked myself before the adaptation, I wouldn't have even listened, just made plans to keep killing them. I was so angry. So hurt. The adaptation didn't fix me. Didn't fix the problem. I still had that burning hatred in my stomach. Yet, I breathed in and out. I wanted to live. I wanted to have fun. I wanted to be lazy sometimes. Revenge was surprisingly tedious. You had to keep that burning hatred lit at all times, because if you started letting it burn out, you started realizing it was kinda pointless to be that obsessed. So yes. I would hunt that spider ripper. And the bastard. I would murder them. Hell, I would torture them if I had the time. Because in the end, I'm not a hero. Not a good person, but I wouldn't exist to do it. I wouldn't spend my life around killing them. They had already taken my arms. They wouldn't take my life. With that I nodded. It was enough. Something I could accept. That caused that urge to go kill Maelstrom to ease off. To let other things take the stage. So since I didn't feel like murder right now, I decided to settle in and work on some skills. With my CAD program and a laptop that I removed any remote access from by physically tearing out the Wi-Fi connections. I had an off-the-grid system that I could pull up Arasaka's CAD system. Then I learned that just because I have some knowledge about engineering, doesn't mean I'm any good at it. Robotics Wizard helped a little, despite being more about putting together robots. But even then, that's not gonna work. I grumbled at myself, looking at the Tachikoma prototype design. If I actually built this, I would have to immediately put it out of its misery. I told myself as I grimaced at just how bad it was. Designing a robot was complicated. At least I was getting engineering alerts really consistently from it. So I went back to the drawing board. Let's just work on a limb to start us off, I muttered as I designed to narrow my focus for a bit. The triple-fingered Tachikoma limb, that could shoot and extend out, was impossible, considering I wasn't building a SUV-sized armored support system. Instead I was thinking a bit smaller to start out. I still remember how useful the flathead was in the game, even if you only get it for the one mission. What would some of the missions be like if you had a small army of them that were also AI? I hadn't considered that problem yet. I could probably design a remote control version of them eventually. But an AI? I didn't have a lot of knowledge on how to even design one, but I knew the hardware requirements of an AI were crazy high. I mean, Delamain's AI was housed in a massive room-sized core. A robot that didn't even reach my knees couldn't possibly reach that point. Even if I programmed the AI to be incredibly efficient. Motoko. June suddenly called out, pulling my head away from the screen as I peek up over the couch where I had made a little nest for myself. Junie? There is another raid tonight. You can come. He told me, hesitating a bit at the reveal. I blinked. I didn't want to go Murderstorm right now. I wanted to design robots. Stupid June. But at the same time, I could use the XP, and my head was clearer. I didn't need to rush in and kill every storm myself. Even if it's only a kill or two, that's still making an improvement. Levels will come. Then I remembered. Sure. I'll bring my Nakomata. I called out, suddenly eagerly. I could shoot tons of people through walls, while the kamikaze ran around like bulls in a china shop. June actually suddenly looked pleased. Good. Get ready, he ordered, pointing firmly as he turned away looking pleased. I guess June was happy to keep me away from the fight. But he was silly. I would have happily stayed home tonight. Chapter 40. I really should have stayed home tonight. We had gone out to hit a maelstrom attack. Apparently, someone had managed to get information that the Strom were going to hit a Tiger Claw business, specifically a little gun shop that supplied quite a few Tiger Claws with firearms. So kamikaze were sent to take out the attack. What that entailed was everyone piling into 4 cars in a nearby alley and being as quiet as possible as we waited, which meant putting a group of budding cyberpsychos into close proximity to each other with the anxiety of future conflict. I was with June and Akari again, and just with that, I was ready to kill someone. Akari was getting snippy. June was surprisingly handling his anger really well. Honestly, he was handling Akari poking him with her sharp feet, or continuously trying to turn on the radio over and over despite all of us supposed to be quiet really well. I, however, was not. Akari kept pushing her passenger seat back into me, and whenever I moved behind June, she would start trying to poke me with her feet blades. I was half a minute away from bashing my Nakomata in the back of her head to get some peace, when both June and Akari stilled. I glanced around the seat, both of their eyes were yellow. I rolled my eyes at not being included and just leaned back. June would tell me what the call was about. Alright, the maelstrom trucks are a minute out. Get ready, June said, and I nodded. Then I instantly opened the door to June's shock. Motoko? He whispered at me as I climbed out. I'll be on the roof. I'll wait for you guys to start attacking before firing. I tell them, pointing to the old buildings we were parked between. I could get up onto the roof and have an overwatch position. If you were willing to do a couple of tricky leaps. I stuck the Nakomata over my shoulder and rushed away before June could say anything else. I was honestly needing my own space. Akari was fun in short doses. Short doses. I tightened my gloves as I started climbing up the building. Sliding from a dumpster to an AC unit, then along the window ledge to jump to the next floor, where I grabbed an overhand and climbed up with a bit of effort. Parkour made it a simple process of just pulling myself up after a jump, each jump and leap climbing me higher and higher in the shortest time. Then I was on the roof, and I hurried to overlook the Tiger Claw shop. Crouching up to the edge, I pulled off my Nakomata and started checking it over. Dun Nut already told me it was fine, but knowing and knowing are two different things. Loaded, with the safety off, I rose up, having already chosen the best place to keep myself completely out of view. A shade from a sign put me entirely into shadow, and the brick I was pushed up against was colorful from graffiti, so I would be invisible without a lot of attention. I eased my eye over the scope. I could hear them. The Maelstrom trucks were old beaters, hyper-tuned monsters, or just loud. Loud and driven angrily. They came around the corner in a mess, two of them even scraping against each other as they took the turn too sharply, but neither driver seemed to care. The cavalcade roared down the street, stopping around the shop, the Maelstrom actually managing an okay semicircle around it, to isolate it. I waited. Kuroshi already scanning the gangsters. My NCPD file search letting my scan not just tell me what the Strom were using for weapons, and some of their cyberware, but also their rap sheet. The more I scanned, the more I smiled. Cleaning up scum was a duty to all lovers of peace and justice after all. I scanned them as I waited, nothing really surprising popping out. Murder, kidnapping, and illegal squatting. But I waited. The Maelstrom Borgs were hollering as if they already won, as they stepped out, a few guns firing into the air, or into the front of the shop seemingly just for fun. I waited. And then finally as the door opened, it happened. The first Borg to try and enter got ripped apart as an HMG began firing from within the building. Instantly, the Maelstrom jumped for cover and started firing back into the store. The forceful response more than the Borgs expected, which is when I saw them. Kamikaze, rushing in head first, from behind. I sighed as I kept both eyes open, one through the scope, and one without as I watched, waited. The first Maelstrom to notice the enemies at his back and turn around, was my target. His shotgun was raised. I exhaled, a stream of what felt like freezing air escaping my lips. It was so easy. My scope was already adjusted for range. My arms held perfectly still. I couldn't design a better weapons platform than my own body at that moment. I pulled the trigger. The Borg lost his head, his shotgun falling out of his hands as his body followed. Bleeding out across the pavement. I specifically ignored the alerts coming through, making sure they wouldn't be caught on the BD one was scrolling. I shifted, my firing had unfortunately caused a few of the Maelstrom gonks to turn around hearing the rifle, but Kamikaze were on them now. June just behind Fujimura. Katana blazing red as he leapt over the back of one of the pickups, cutting down the Maelstrom gonk that was standing up on the bed, and then putting himself into the group. But I was Overwatch and I saw everything. The Kamikaze gonkhead that hadn't properly checked his ass and didn't notice the driver of one of the trucks step out and start aiming at his back. The Kamikaze was punching a Borg into scrap, despite the body being quite dead. Hazards of cyber psychos, I supposed. Then I fired. The driver slammed face first into his truck's rear door. As my round burst through his chest, he slipped to the pavement without resistance. I shifted again. It was funny. I rarely tended to use rifles, but with all of my skills and perks, they did synergize well. I fired again. The gonk that Fujimura was wrestling with had been just as big as the angry Kamikaze leader. They had tangled on the floor, each trying to rip the other apart with their cyberware and strength. I had a clear shot and took it. The Maelstrom, spider-like head came apart in two, splattering Fujimura in white Borg blood. I moved on, uncaring that I could see Fujimura's angry glare looking towards me. But instead of firing, I dropped. A barrage of bullets slamming into my previous position, I rolled along completely unbothered by the stone shrapnel as I kept the Nikomata closed. Chrome arms made rolling on the ground surprisingly painless. The burst of automatic fire was pulled away, but that was all I needed. As soon as it stopped, I sprung up. Jogging sideways along the edge of the rooftop, stealth no longer needed, lining up the shot. The gonk that had just shot at me, while still distracted as he was being shot at, noticed and started aiming towards me. Too slow. I fired. The fucker ducked away just in time, his own response wildly missing even when mine punched a quarter-sized hole into the side of the truck he was now taking cover behind. I didn't wait. My hands already dancing, as I grabbed another magazine from a hip pouch, dropping the empty magazine, and slamming the new one home. I was already aiming in once I stabilized from the reload I fired. Punching through the truck, and the moron that thought a few bits of car sighting would stop a tech sniper rifle. I didn't stop moving, instead focusing on my next target, but it was already over. Kamikaze were tearing the last few Maelstrom members into pieces. A quick look over the battlefield to make sure no one was playing dead, and I nodded. Mission complete. I threw the Nakomata over my shoulder, taking a moment to scope out my path, and leapt off the side of the building, landing on a sign. I slipped off that to another lower sign, and then onto a ledge of the building, then simply stepped off and landed on the concrete. I exhaled. That felt good. I took a moment to glance at the alerts after I shut off the BD scrolling. Looking through the list of alerts, very pleased with what I saw. 500 XP gained. 100 Assault XP gained. 100 Assault XP gained. 500 XP gained. 100 Assault XP gained. Assault skill level up. 1 perk point gained. 1000 XP gained. 100 Assault XP gained. 500 XP gained. A new perk. Yay! I would have to check on that later, for now I focused on the scene around me. I jogged up, noticing the Kamikaze were twitchy, all of them looking for more bloodshed. I ignored their glares and wandered up to June. You okay, June? NII? Get hit at all? I asked, already reaching for my medical pouch, but he waved me off. Nothing my subdermal didn't catch. He mentioned, as I looked towards his plastic abs, a ragged scrape cut through the flesh, but I could see it was only skin deep. The bullet ricocheted. Ow. That still looked painful. You sure? I got a max doc, got some painkillers. I mumbled, pulling out some stuff I had picked up at the random pharmacy I had stopped at before all of this. I don't feel it. I have a pain editor. He told me with a shrug, and I had nothing on that, just nodding. Even if my fingers twitched to tie a bandage around it. I looked around at the carnage then. The 20 or so Maelstrom Borgs were torn to pieces. Blood dripped and ran down the road. A few of the Kamikaze were injured, only one seriously. A shotgun had clipped one of the female members. She was down an arm, but otherwise fine. A visit to a Ripper and she would be right as rain. Funny how combat was in the future. Vicious, bloody affairs. A few vans roaring down the roads had me twitching, but the Kamikaze around us waved them forward and they stopped. Instantly, tiger claw grunts jumped out of the back of the familiar moving vans. It was like the ones Ichi had borrowed for the Scovrade. No. I blinked, feeling the cool dryness of my karoshi. Not like the vans. The same van, because they're in the driver's seat, which I could only make out due to my karoshi, was Ichi. June. I'm gonna go see how Ichi is doing. You alright? Huh? Oh, you're chum. Go on, I'm fine. Stop hovering. He ordered, waving me off, but it was in a joking manner that made me smile as I threw him a thumbs up and ran up to the van, happily jumping up onto the door and sticking my crossed arms onto the rim so I could stick my head in. Long time no see. I cried out instantly, causing Ichi to yelp like a girl, and scrambled around as he tried and failed to fumble a gun out of his holster. Motoko? You should either practice that draw a bit more, or store a gun somewhere you can grab easily. I informed him with a grin. As the boy sighed out all of his air and seemed to check his heart. Please don't do that. These jobs are tense. Why? All the Maelstrom gonks are dead. Yeah, maybe. They aren't always, and reinforcements are a thing. Well, then you should definitely work on that draw. How you been, Ichi? I haven't heard from you since. Well. Since the war heated up, yeah. Motoko. Is that Chrome? He asked, blinking in shock as he took in my arms resting on the door. Yeah. I got clept by the Maelstrom. They were trying to draw out June. Apparently he killed enough of the Strom to make a mark. Clept? Again? He asked, looking horrified. Yeah. Right outside the apartment. Shot me up, and cut off my hands. I waved my hands a bit, wiggling the fingers. It really sucked. They took me to this pit fight thing. Well, I don't really want to talk about it. Eventually, June got enough people together to come get me. I was alive. Mostly. I'm fixed up. Mostly. I admitted, actually feeling my voice go a little heavy at the end there. He looked me over for a moment, nodding. You're strong. You'll be okay. But if you need anything, we are still chums. I smiled at that. What else could I do? I didn't really have many chums. Thanks, Itchy. Where is Malcolm anyways? I thought he was your co-pilot while you worked. Malcolm bailed. We got shot up a few nights into everything, neither of us got hit, but one of the guys in the back got torn up. Malcolm tried to stabilize the guy, but it didn't work out. He took it hard. He's been staying home ever since. I frowned a bit. I wasn't really close to Malcolm, but he was part of our little kitty gang. I should call him, or visit maybe? Itchy looked surprised at my question. You would do that? Of course. I'm not really close to you or him or Omida, but you guys are still my chums. You've known me since before the coma, right? And we were a little pack of troublemakers. I got to look out for you guys, or at least offer an ear. Honestly, something I probably should have been doing before. I had been a little self-focused, ignoring making friends or my old chums. Itchy was quiet for a moment before he smiled. Malcolm would like that. Really? How about you then? The Tiger Claw loot recovery job doing well? I asked, putting on a teasing smile as he chuffed a bit. Honestly? You paid better. I cackled at that, both of us breaking into laughter. Well, maybe I should hire you full-time. I hit this maelstrom place the other night, and with everything including June showing up tracking me down, I had to leave so much loot. I was so sad. I told him as I plopped my chin down on the door. Leaving loot behind is wrong. Well, obviously you need to hire a professional loot recovery agent. Unfortunately, I'm all booked. He said, giving the length just long enough to get my hopes up. Mean. So you and the kamikaze? You know those guys are cyber psychos? No, I totally missed that, and thought they were all perfectly reasonable people. I said tonelessly, managing to draw a snort from him. Well, be careful. They are useful and effective, but all the guys that work with them tell horror stories. Sometimes they go off on the retrieval guys. I can see it. I nod, thinking on the few times that they seem to start losing it. But I just gotta keep an eye on June. He wasn't in a good place. Well, you gotta stick with your brother. I never would have thought they would let you in though. You have to be seriously chromed up for them to even consider. I'm not joined, I'm more like a ghost that follows June around. That's all. Pfft. Yeah, more like an Onryo. He joked, and it took me a moment to remember what that meant. Hey. I don't crawl out of TVs. And my hair is nice. He just shook his head at me, smiling, which earned him a light tap on the shoulder that he winced and rubbed. It was only a baby tap. With my chrome knuckles. Ow. I'm sorry. I didn't hear about the kidnapping thing. I just thought you were busy doing crazy shit again. I should have reached out. He mumbled after a while of silence between us. I was under a jammer for a long while. But I should have reached out and checked on you too. I visited Hiromi, but I didn't even call. Sorry. Not much of a chum, I guess. You're better than you used to be. Scarier, funnily enough, even if old you was more interested in being intimidating, but you manage it better. Interesting. Really? How would you describe old me? I asked. I hadn't really gotten much from anyone about how I used to be. Who I used to be. He hesitated for a bit but shrugged. Listen, I liked you, we were chums and we got into trouble together, but you were kinda a bitch. You got us into so much trouble that we could have avoided by just not starting shit. Wow. Hiromi never mentioned that. She wouldn't. Hiromi has always been never mind. Look, your brother is trying to get your attention. He instantly switched topics, pointing. As interested as I was in what he had been about to say, I turned and saw June waving for me. Well, he is my current ride, so I better Delta. Keep in touch, Itchy. We are still chums. Same to you, Motoko. I nodded as I jumped off and hurried after June. Girl. You are coming too, Fujimura demanded as we all piled out of the cars. I had been heading back towards the apartment to put up my equipment, and probably clean my Nakomata, but Fujimura had suddenly called out, specifically at me. After action report? Yeah. Guess Fujimura-sama wants you there. You must have done well. June offered with a smile as Akari suddenly poked her head in between us. Or terrible. Maybe he'll cut you up for messing up so bad? I don't think I messed up? I told her as we walked, but she was quick to run in front of me and walk backwards, which seemed to take some effort with her feet blades. Ooh, but you ran off. Fujimura-sama hates when people do something he didn't tell them to. Motoko is in trouble. She mocked as we reached the window that led us into the dojo area. Shut up, Akari. June grumbled at her, but then we were there, in the downstairs area of the dojo. With the couches and little plastic chairs arrayed around Fujimura that stood. Another injury, pathetic. He growled out as he looked over the people. Injuries are expected, serious injuries are not. If you are incapable of not losing a limb, then get better chrome, or die so someone more skilled can use yours. He demanded, pulling no punches. Also wow. What an asshole thing to say. Girl. He said suddenly pulled me away from my thoughts. I was standing behind June who was sitting on one of the plastic chairs in the circle. Yes? You nearly shot me tonight. He said bluntly, and I couldn't help but wonder what the hell he was talking about. No, I didn't. Your bullet passed less than a foot from my head. Yeah? It didn't come anywhere close to you. I mean, I'm not a crack shot or anything, but at that range? I could probably get the round to kiss you if I wanted. I replied, getting a little grumbly. This guy was such an asshole, and I was kind of sick of it. He looked me over before nodding. Kamikaze don't have a marksman. That skill set doesn't tend to come hand in hand with our purpose. Kusanagi. Your sister is acceptably useful. You didn't waste our time having us save her. He offered and then just turned away and started squeezing everyone through the ringer on their fuck-ups. June and I both weren't exempt. Apparently I fired too slow. Well, yeah. I only had assault 5. I wasn't going to shoot any faster. I might friendly fire. Well, I could still level it up some more. It was fun. By the time I settled onto the couch that night, blanket pulled up to my chin and ready for a sleep to get the muscle pain in my back to go away. I had a thought. Wait. Does he think I'm a member now? But I'm not a cyber psycho.